HasanAbi corporate. I don't even know what that is.
Do you see me?
Oh my God.
I'm tiny.
Bro, this is hilarious. You look hilarious right now.
Can I crop this? How do I make this look better?
Oh my God, you look so funny. Ethan Klein 219. This is, what room is this in your house? What is happening?
I had to move upstairs because there's some shit going on in the basement. So I'm in this depressing bomb shelter-esque.
Yeah.
So, first of all, thank you. How are you?
I'm all right. How about you? You donated to the Palestinian Relief Fund as well, and we got a notice from ANERA. They're talking to all the other organizations as well, but we got a notice from ANERA that like some of those funds have already made its way into medical supplies and food in Gaza. So that's great.
That is awesome. I've been listening to your stream for like an hour, and I like you. I got a lot of shit from Israelis for donating because they're like, oh, it's just gonna go to Hamas, but I looked into the charity you picked, and it is really highly rated. So I'm like, I don't really think this is going to Hamas. There's no way.
You can't.
They logistics steal shit, but it's just food and medical supplies.
Yeah, the logistics of it is like also impossible. Like the thing is, you can't even make donations like through to Palestinian charities through like PayPal usually. Like it's already a very complicated process. And it's not just like just for Palestinians in general. The similar structure exists for even like Pakistan, which is like a client state, right? If you were to try to utilize, if you had like anyone that that lives in Pakistan and you wanted to give them money, you would not be able to do so. Like it's really shitty.
Yeah, and I mean, what choice do you have? They need help, so it's like you just pick the best option and hope that it gets there. But I'm glad it is getting there.
Yeah. But yeah, these are also authorized. These are also authorized charities by the Israeli government too. Like you can't fucking operate.
That's great. There you go.
Yeah.
That's even better.
You can't operate inside of Gaza without obviously Israel allowing you to operate inside of Gaza.
By the way, dude, I got a fucking Air Force ad on your stream, like 3 of them.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
They pump that shit pretty hard, which I feel like is so funny because I think it's because it's like this is politics, so they think like, oh yeah, people will love this, but it's the least susceptible audience that you could possibly give Air Force ads to.
Definitely, that is true. I just thought it was pretty outrageous, but you're right. I don't think they're converting anyone in your audience.
Yeah, there's a Marine Corps too.
So basically, I wanted to talk about specifically the 1-state versus 2-state solution. Mm-hmm. And my approach to this when talking about it is purely pragmatic, and I'm trying to be realistic. I think our goals are aligned in that we want peace, a lasting peace, a meaningful peace. I know it seems like impossibly far away, but I do think there are certain starting points that we need to come from and agree on before, expanding out from there. And one of them is this issue. I understand that you are a 1-state. You don't believe in a 2-state solution. I'm assuming.
I used to be. I used to believe in a 2-state solution. I was an advocate for a 2-state solution, and I think like there are a lot of other people who also used to be 2-state solutioners themselves that have changed their perspective dramatically over the course of the past couple of decades. Due to the settlements and the rapid expansion of settlements. I think Avi Shleim is like another person that I can immediately call. He is a Iraqi Jew, famous Israeli scholar, part of the New Historians. He's talked about this before as well.
By the way, when you talk to someone, I can't see you, and the stream is delayed. How do you usually do this if you're calling in?
Oh,
I mean, it's fine if I can't see you. It'd be better though.
Usually, I just don't. The reason why I don't show myself is usually because I screen share with whoever I'm on with stream. Because like we'll look at like Ben Shapiro videos or whatever.
Oh, okay.
So it doesn't really matter.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
So, first of all, I guess I'll say this. When talking about the two-state solution, I'll agree that there cannot be a meaningful negotiation here without like basically fully dismantling the settlements. And I would even be in favor of offering some kind of, restitution to the Palestinians that were evicted. That's a big ask, obviously, but I do believe that that is the right thing to do in this agreement. So we can start from there, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, reparations is reparations is not only a like moral right in this situation. I think it also is like logical to do, specifically so that so that there is like less tension and it's a more viable solution. And last but not least, reparations in this process is also a matter of international law. I guess the only thing that is up for contention is that the Israeli position on the matter is, we'll just hold off on negotiations as best as possible while we do settlements. But also simultaneously is the notion that like actually other Arab states should be giving reparations to the Palestinians as well. Like we shouldn't be bearing the burden of the reparations because it's their fault, because like their position is that the Nakba didn't happen and that there was no ethnic displacement and the Palestinians voluntarily left. This is the Israeli government's broad position. Obviously, there's varying degrees.
Yeah, obviously, we would need a completely different cabinet as well because the one right now is, I believe that Netanyahu and his cabinet are, one side of the same coin with Hamas. They're both obstructionists and violent fucking lunatics. So, starting with all that established, my question to you is this, and again, approaching this from a fully realistic perspective, what do you think would happen in the region that would result in Israel conceding to a one-state solution?
Oh, that's a great question. I think one of the greatest things that could happen in a one-state solution is that you completely limit, obviously we're talking about like a hypothetical future that is like very far away, but you completely limit Iran's power and exertion of influence over militant factions that are being currently used as a destabilizing force against Israel. The other states are not all that important, with the only reason why I talk about Iran is because Iran is the only regional actor that is like genuinely anti-Israel. They see Israel as an expression of Western influence in the region, and of course they will use, like they have Hezbollah, another Iranian-backed movement that became a political party as well, as a consequence of like Israeli incursion in Lebanon as well in the civil war. And these are all opportunities for Iran to push back by way of Syria, by way of Iraq, by way of Lebanon, by way of the Houthis in Yemen, that they would not be able to utilize these militant factions if there was a permanent peace solution.
So I guess I'll ask the question again because I'm not sure if it was answered directly. But what do you think could happen in the region that would result in a one-state solution?
I think that the normalization agreements would continue with the Gulf nation states, and that Iran's influence over militant factions within Palestinian forces would wither away because there would be no necessity for their continued violent emancipatory efforts. And
so you're saying that continued normalization of relationship between Israel and neighboring countries.
Yeah, that was already, because a lot of the neighboring countries are already like, they're basically American client states to begin with. Egypt being a great example of this. Like the Egyptian economy would not exist without America's like tremendous amount of help. Like we give Israel a lot of money. We talk about that all the time, but we give Egypt even more money than that, right? Like, so Egypt is a great example of this. the UAE and Saudi Arabia, again, regional actors that have their own personal interests in the matter, but like they're not interested in defending Palestinians by any means. Regardless, they are absolutely America's solid allies in the region too. So most of those countries are pretty much designed in a way, like if we're talking about Jordan, directly designed with European influence. Again, another country that's like a holdover state, basically. These are all countries that will go along with the. These are all countries that will go along with whatever America's interests are, as long as America can reinforce its hegemonic power in the region, and genuinely is interested in developing a new relationship with other regional powers.
So, I do question the.
What's your concern? Let me ask that, because I think that would be better.
I mean, with like Syria, Lebanon, Iran, I believe that this idea that there would be full acceptance of Arab countries of the existence of Israel is pretty idealistic. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, you think you're saying that you're worried that Lebanon and Syria and other regional actors that are backed by Iran, Yemen being another one, the Houthis, would not accept an Israeli state if Palestinians were absorbed into it, and would be a singular state with Palestinians getting like democratic.
Well, it's not that. It's there would need to be some meaningful, and I mean, something we've never seen happen in that region ever before Israel would say, okay, we're going to dissolve our state. Because that again, you have to, my concern is that people that say they want a one state are basically, in a non-starter conversation. It's unproductive almost. I find it so unlikely to happen. So, well, like the other issue is like, so
can I cut in here real quick before we move on from that? So there already is a one state. Like, the way I see it, the actual legitimate reason as to why I don't believe in a two-state solution any longer is because there is a one state, right? And that one state is an apartheid state. It's a constant Israeli occupation in the West Bank and constant control over Gaza as well, which has been a demonstrable failure for Israeli security, obviously. You and I agree on that. But my solution, basically, when I say I want a one state, is it, first and foremost, a moral one, because I do want the end to the apartheid so that Palestinians can have, recognition, it can continue a life of dignity, have autonomy, and participate in a secular democratic process. But the alternative is, the way I see it is like, is it a one state that is an apartheid, or is it a one state that doesn't have an apartheid? And
you're saying it could still be the state of Israel.
I don't care what it's called. I have no interest in discussing that. I care more about like human beings that live there.
I guess, it's like this idea that of Israel normalizing relations with all of their neighbors is just like, when can that ever happen? Because if we're going to have a conversation like right now about, the best path forward to peace for both groups, that just doesn't seem like. And then here's another aspect, is that if you were to basically remove the all the checkpoints and walls and barriers and blockades and all that stuff, and again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I'm just coming at it from a very pragmatic perspective. Do you think there would be more or less violence against Israelis?
Wait, I'm sorry. In a one state solution, do you think there's more or less violence against Israelis? Is that what you said?
Yes. I mean, that's not exactly what I said, but it's close enough.
I think the grand scheme of things, it would be less. Where am I coming from this? Why am I saying this? Well, because there are good examples of an apartheid state obviously no longer existing when we look at South Africa, as a matter of fact. But also, on top of that, one thing I want to go back to, you said like Israel's allies or Israel's like regional enemies are they constitute a threat, right? Well, they still currently constitute a threat. A one-state solution just eliminates like one internal faction that is an ever-present danger.
And you're telling me if we were to lift the blockade and the wall around Gaza today, there wouldn't be more violence against Israelis?
I 1000% look to what has happened in the past throughout history in similar formations where there was like a lot of things that we consider to be completely morally unjustifiable. That restoration process often will lead, almost always has historically led to less violence than the violence of the maintenance of this process. Because you're asking violence against Israelis.
I don't know how useful it is to compare it to like other situations because it does have a lot of unique things. For example, I mean, the government in charge of Gaza, Hamas, is singularly dedicated to destroying Israel and killing Israelis. So how I just don't understand how you can say that removing the wall would result in less violence.
Because Hamas itself is a mere expression and simply one militant faction amongst the sea of Palestinians, 5 million of them living under the occupation, under the apartheid regime.
I know there's a ton of peaceful Palestinians, the vast majority, but there's also a lot of Hamas.
Yeah, no.
So if you're an Israeli, and you see someone saying we need a one state, that's the only solution. The Israelis are going to see, okay, we're going to remove our walls, we're going to remove our checkpoints, and it's going to be suicide bombs in our cafes and buses again within the matter of days.
Well, with the walls and checkpoints, October 7th still happened, right? So it's more of a matter of like, of whether the ceasefires have worked successfully. And usually the ceasefire process is, even though it is led by Hamas on the Palestinian front, is still relatively successful. That's one thing. But I do think that comparing this to other historical events is important because, I mean, chattel slavery was truly a continued form of unimaginable, untold amounts of genocidal struggle, where, you know, African people were ripped away from their homes. You know the stories. I don't need to, tell you about that. But then in the Reconstruction process, there was a similar fear that what if black people that were now newly freed would turn around and treat white people in the same way that we had historically treated them. No such thing actually occurred in that process. And as a matter of fact, the real violence that came after that was conducted by the KKK, a desperate attempt to restore the racial hierarchy, the racial pecking order in the South was established by the militant factions.
I know there were isolated incidents of, slave revolts where they kind of took over the plantation and killed the master and stuff. But
I mean, like Nat Turner.
Has there ever been a organized group of black terrorists that were, launching attacks on basically, I mean, civilian, I guess, whatever, yes. But I mean, not, okay, who, when?
Well, I just gave you one example, but then also specifically in apartheid South Africa, the ANC in the beginning of the 60s under Nelson Mandela decided to take up violent means because they had tried and exhausted all peaceful options of civil disobedience. Originally, they chose to oppose the apartheid by engaging in mass actions and trying to get mass arrests to cripple and dismantle the carceral system in South Africa. So that didn't work. Thousands were arrested. Then there was another riot where police opened up live fire and killed 69 black protesters against the apartheid from the ANC. And then after that, there was a shift into more militant resistance against the apartheid. And the violence from the ANC, just like the violence from the IRA in the Troubles, was not only, it wasn't directly against
I was asking about
military
American
positions.
Slavery. But the truth is, I've been learning a lot about Israel Palestine, and I don't know as much about like South Africa apartheid. So let's just stay on, I guess, focused on the Because I just, to be frank, I don't know what you're citing, so it's not helping me much.
Well, the reason why I'm citing that is because you said, like, is there a way? And I'm giving you historic examples that aren't that far off, whether it be the Reconstruction period, but that is too far off if you don't want to think about that. ANC's actions and activities that put Nelson Mandela on the terrorist watch list until 2008 were against civilian populations as well. They engaged in.
Okay, so listen, I'll concede that it's possible as a result of what happened in apartheid in South Africa, but in Israel, as it is now, I don't think you could convince a single Israeli that removing the blockade and borders checkpoints wouldn't result in immediate violence against them. And that's why I believe it's a non-starter. I don't think you'll ever convince Israel to basically dissolve their state and remake it as one state. I just don't think Israel would ever do that, ever.
I don't disagree with you.
It would never happen. The only way that would happen is beside force, which is why I asked in the beginning, what could lead to Israel willingly dissolving its country and agreeing to create a one-state country, short of just annihilating massive amounts of Israelis in an all-out war. I don't see any other way to do it.
No, I think that no, the way to do that the enforcement mechanism would be international pressure, but most importantly, the number one most important party at play here, the United States of America. Now, the reason why I talked about the ANC or South African apartheid is because Israel and South Africa were allies in that same time frame, and they relied on one another quite effectively during the Cold War as well. And also, I personally believe that Israel saw what happened during the South African apartheid and vowed not to repeat those mistakes in order to continue being a ethno state, a Jewish ethno state, and maintain an apartheid structure in occupied territories. So that's the reason why I think it's important to draw this parallel. And it's also important because that's how international pressure worked in that situation. It's a very successful and very recent example of an apartheid regime ending with international pressure, specifically with American sanctions. What's up?
You think with international pressure, Israel would dissolve their country and create a one state?
With international pressure, Israel would do anything that, not even international pressure, but just American pressure, Israel would do anything that America wants.
I think it's important for you to understand that will never happen. And I say this not from a right or wrong perspective. I'm just saying this from pragmatically. I know Israelis. I've lived in Israel. That will never, ever, ever happen, short of all-out war. They will never give up the country, ever. It will never. It's 0% chance.
No, I understand that. I know that there isn't a willingness. Here's the counter from South Africa. You could say in South Africa, the white population was only 10%, right? And even then, the majority, after long and continued pressure campaigns from the international community, actually moved in the direction of ending the apartheid themselves. So that is actually a way to counter what I'm saying right now, right? You can just say, well, in South Africa, even the majority white population was on board with ending the apartheid for one reason or another, whereas in Israel, there's currently no appetite for this whatsoever.
It is 73% Jews in Greater Israel. So there's a ton of Palestinians, in West Bank and Gaza and neighboring countries.
Yes.
But it is largely a Jewish state by quite a margin, which makes it, in my opinion, uncomparable. It's not apples, it's not apples to apples with apartheid South Africa.
What do you mean by that?
Well, as you said, the white population was 10%, right?
Oh, yeah. The white population was much smaller. And this is what Noam Chomsky refers to as Israel's labor problems being fixed in the aftermath of the first Intifada. Israel relied on, obviously, the Arab population to do the labor in many cases, like cheaper labor. And after the first Intifada was fought with strikes and, you know, stone throwing and the like, Israel moved in a different direction. That's why there's like a new population of a labor force that is often imported in, whether it's Sudanese refugees or whether it's you know, Thai workers that are able to work like a cheap labor force that isn't.
I feel like you're not understanding or not understanding. I don't mean to say it in a condescending way. I don't mean like that. I just mean like you're not engaging with this idea that Israel will never give up its state short of all-out war and violence.
It's not about Israel giving up its state. It's about Israel dissolving the apartheid structure and allowing Palestinians to also be a part of its democratic process.
So then that's what
and I
go
do
back
understand
to.
that there is an appetite. I do understand that there is no appetite in Israel whatsoever from the 73% Jewish population especially in doing such a thing. I totally get that. There's two considerations here, or three actually. One is the moral one. I think you and I both agree that that is like that would be a good thing, right? Ending the apartheid would be a good thing. The second consideration is a matter of international law, and the last one is obviously what this would look like in practice. So when I talk about the morality of the situation, I think you and I are both in agreement. But when we're talking about it in a practical application, you have concerns, but concerns that revolve around Israel not wanting to do this and fighting against it tooth and nail. Right?
They will literally, it will never happen.
I completely understand what you're saying. I agree that as it stands currently, that the Israeli government would refuse to do this. The Israeli population would not be receptive.
Everybody.
Yeah, the Israeli population would not be receptive to it. Ultimately, it still doesn't change the reality that this would be an ethno state, and there's pressure campaigns that could work from the international community that could sway the Israeli.
I don't think, dude. You can. It doesn't matter whatever sanctions you can dream of. You're not gonna convince Israel to dissolve their borders. You know, you have to like. And again, I'm not justifying. I'm not defending anyone. I'm only speaking pragmatically about where do we start talking about this conversation of peace.
Okay.
You know, another thing you have to understand is that a ton of the Israeli population are people who escaped the Holocaust. And when they came down there, they bring generations of paranoia and, you know, persecution. And so there is, I believe, a widespread belief held by nearly every Israeli that if the borders would dissolve, if the borders would come down, there would be a massive genocide against Jews, and that they believe that, and I don't know necessarily to what extent that might be true, but I can tell you for sure that that's what they hear when they think one state is basically a bunch of Israelis being massacred. That's what they hear, that's what they see, and that's why it will never happen.
Okay, so the paranoia that people have, or Holocaust survivors have, especially, is I guess important for the practical application of the matter. But I'll give you an example of like the government moving in a direction that the people actually don't want the government to move in at the behest of the United States. So, or even sometimes moving in the direction that people don't want it to move in, but then still engaging in it. Like the rapid settlement expansion is something that is often contentious and has been very contentious throughout time. Government doesn't really factor into considerations like what the broader liberal Israeli society thinks about the matter. They just keep building the fucking settlements and populating these areas, right? And the opposite has happened as well. In a time when, according to the Israeli Democratic Institute polling, I believe 80% of the Israeli Jewish population believes that there's no need to consider Palestinian lives. In the last siege in Gaza, the government has taken steps that some people would find to be inappropriate in opening up humanitarian corridors so that you can bring in supplies. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant was asked the question in in the aftermath of the first day of the Rafah border opening so that they could bring in trucks and trucks of supplies into Gaza. They were asked, why are you doing this? To which Yoav Gallant responded with, what can I do? America told me I have to do this. In 2021, Joe Biden called up Netanyahu. What's up?
Letting humanitarian aid through Rafah crossing, comparing that to dissolving your sovereign border. Come on.
No, of course. It's not a one-to-one comparison at all. I'm simply stating that something as minor as that, all the way to ending a siege is entirely up to the United States and what the United States is letting Israel do and allowing it to do.
What pressure could the United States exert over Israel that would be so powerful that they would say we have to dissolve our country?
First of all, I don't believe that this would be a dissolvement of Israel as a nation state. It would simply allow the Palestinians that are currently under occupation to be also a part of the democratic process. And it also would not happen overnight either. But if you're asking me the question, it's sanctions. It's the shutting off the money faucet. It's shutting off bombs. I mean, we were just looking at it. You said you were watching the stream earlier, so you probably saw this already. But like, we shipped two different, I think mobile. We shipped two different mobile Iron Dome trucks into Israel. We are consistently shipping in Mark 84 rockets into Israel so that they can directly use this on the offensive, by the way. Like, this is not even a defensive weapon that they have. This is specifically so they can engage in offensive posturing in the Gaza Strip. So without America's involvement, Israel would not be able to behave in the ways that it has so far. America could just as easily tomorrow, with one phone call, turn on, call Bibi Netanyahu and say, enough, cut it out, you're done. Joe Biden has done this in 2021. Even Ronald Reagan has done this in the past. George W. Bush has done this, or George H.W. Bush, sorry. So we have a lot more say on what Israel gets to do than vice versa.
So your statement is that if America stops selling Israel bombs and arms, then they will I say dissolve the country because, again, that's how the people in Israel are going to view this. Mm-hmm. It won't be the same place, for them, and to them, their security is paramount.
We're not selling the weapons, we're just giving them weapons.
Okay, so you don't think that Israel could get bombs from other places?
Certainly, but Israel is our ally, and Israel relies a tremendous amount on U.S. aid, right? To the tune of $4 billion, but also Israel engages in a lot of trade. For example, in 2013, Israel was offering weapon schematics, U.S. weapons to China. America stopped that, right? So like Israel does have global partnerships, but many of those global partnerships are still almost entirely managed by the United States. So the way I see Israel is not necessarily like an independent nation state, but simply like an American state, a very important state too, like not like fucking Montana, like an actual American state that Americans care about, more like New York.
We love the people from Montana. We kid them, but we love them.
But so for that reason, America has complete control over Israel's trade relationships. Obviously, there's like, there are obviously times when, some Israeli actions will over leverage or overextend itself that like Americans will get mad at, but ultimately they're still fine with it. Like Pegasus. Are you familiar with Pegasus is?
Yeah, of course. And Israel, and I'm sure there's lots of other countries that would happily love to use that in exchange for any fucking thing that Israel wanted, if there was to be their ties to be severed.
Yeah, so like America has been very critical of the Pegasus software, right? Like, because it's so invasive, the surveillance technology, and yet America also uses Pegasus. So like, it's more so, it's almost always this like, hey guys, don't do that, and like finger wagging publicly while simultaneously, helping Israel continue doing whatever it's doing because it's beneficial
America's
to us.
influence over Israel is great, but
I think it's absolute.
I mean, Israel was fighting to defend itself before America gave a fuck about the region. So I don't see. I genuinely think that it will never happen. Even if America was like, I'm cutting your aid, this relationship is over unless you open the borders and create this new state. It would.
I think before
would
America, it
never
was
happen.
the British. Before America, I think it was the British, and
No,
there
after the British were gone, after the Palestinian Mandate, and the British said, "Fuck this, I don't want to deal with this shit." The Jews were fighting to defend themselves and their new place in that area from the very beginning, with no help from anybody.
That's not. I mean, that's not true. They were shipping in weapons. Even under British occupation, they were still shipping in weapons illicitly.
After British occupation, I'm talking about like
but also
1948. Who was supporting Israel in 1948?
So the Haganah, Irgun, and Lehi brigades that were at that point almost always considered like a standing army during the Nakba were fighting against predominantly villagers with like that had been disarmed by the British. The Zionist brigades at that point, even before England pulled out, even before the British pulled out, were being trained by the British forces, while the other side was being disarmed by the British forces. That's why there was an asymmetry to the violence even then. Over the course of the years, but specifically during the Nakba as well, 6,000 Israelis died, whereas 15,000 Arabs died, with 750,000 Arabs being Palestinians being expelled from their homes. The reason for why this happened wasn't because you had rugged fighters or whatever. I mean, they were great fighters too, but it was also because it was a broadly civilian population that was being slaughtered, and by a militia force that was trained, had weapons, had even a plane, had armored personnel carriers, whatever it looked like back then, and had much better weapons as well. So
I mean, listen, this stuff is just not comparable. I mean, if you look at the United States during 1948, there was an arms embargo during the time.
Yeah, and they sent in illicit weapons into Israel regardless. That's what I was talking about. They got it from France, and they got it from many other areas.
Can you provide a source on that? Because that's not how I understand it went down.
Okay.
I understand that they got some help and weapons from like Czechoslovakia was selling them rifles and shit. Selling it to them, you know what I mean? There wasn't a lot of countries that were willing to sell them anything, but Czechoslovakia.
There was an arms embargo, which meant that they were acquiring illicit weapons. Yes, this is true. From many different countries. However, beyond that, they also had access to British arms as well. That's why they had like armored personnel carriers, tanks. Not many, but ultimately you were fighting against a civilian population that was almost completely disarmed regardless.
I mean, the Egyptian army was considered one of the best at the time of that war.
Well, not necessarily, it seems. But
why? Because they lost? But they were. I mean, they were considered one of the best armies in the world, which is why the war was so thought to be like, oh, this is going to be an easy dub for the Arab countries.
I don't think that they were. I do not think that they were a really good standing army at all. I think that the overarching. I don't know if you're talking about 1948 or if you're talking about 1967.
I'm talking about 1948 war.
Okay, there was no. I think there is a little bit of confusion with what you're saying, because what you're describing sounds like 1967, because in 1948, like the Egyptian army that you're referencing in 1948 is not like a serious one.
No, I'm talking about 1948. I think Egypt was considered like a military power, especially in the region, and a fairly well trained army. But I think we're kind of, to go back to the original point, so I don't want to drift too far off topic here, is that Israel, if it has to, will definitely go its own way before it dissolve its borders. Like I hope, I really want people to understand how impossible, how that will never ever ever happen. And again, not defending them. I'm not I'm not justifying anything. I'm just speaking pragmatically. You have a people who are coming from this systemic genocide, coming and getting their own borders here, right or wrong. Again, just being pragmatic. They have a massive, well-trained standing army of the whole country. They have nuclear bombs. They're fucking crazy, dude. They will, and they do believe that dissolving the borders would be a second genocide. They believe that, all of them, almost all of them, I'd say. And
Yeah.
so you have to reckon with this reality that with the one state, it's impossible.
I understand it, and that's why I said it's not going to happen overnight. It's not like, all right, everybody, like, it's a one state now. Like, that's not how this works, right? But a international commitment in the exact opposite direction has to happen, and it has not happened thus far.
Well, then a good question even then is like, do you ever even think that's possible before we can even get to the idea that we need to exert pressure on Israel from foreign forces?
I think that there's a reason why there is a steady flow of propaganda into the Western world that the Israel Foreign Ministry cares about a lot, because they want to maintain a posture that is broadly supported by the Western world. And I think that dam has been breaking since 2021, once like B'Tselem, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch also all officially declared Israel to be an apartheid state. In my opinion, it was, decades late. But yes, over time, as the brutality of this regime continues to get worse and worse, more and more people will, in my opinion, keep continuously protesting Israel's actions, and will push for more push to get Western leadership to pull support away, and ultimately even move in the direction of sanctions. This kind
of timeline are we thinking here?
I'm not entirely. I don't know. I don't know how long this will take, but I won't stop fighting for it.
It doesn't go on that long. It sounds like that's a really long plan.
Well, there's not really. I mean, the inverse of this is also a really long plan, and the really long plan revolves around Israel continuing to, like, slowly but surely engage in pogroms in the West Bank, turn a blind eye to it, or directly arm the settlers like Itamar Ben-Gvir has been doing, and continue to push Palestinians in the West Bank further and further away, with the ultimate goal of, like, maintaining an ethnic cleansing and ethnic displacement campaign in parts of Gaza, maybe even annex further and further, because, like, everybody fully understands that there's no way to, like, eradicate not just Hamas, but just like a means of violent resistance against an apartheid, right? So if it's not Hamas, then it's Hamas too, right? Hamas in and of itself was not a real entity that was even remotely popular in its formation, moving away from a charity group, an Islamic charity group that, like, literally was getting funding from Israel as well, to an actual militant group in 1988, to one that switched over to start using suicide bombs on civilian targets in the aftermath of 1994.
The one thing I learned about Hamas, because it's easy to look at Israel and look at all the obstructionists to peace. I mean, Rabin, I think it was Rabin that was executed, right, by a fucking psychotic, and they were so close. They were so close to peace. But Hamas actually rose to prominence in opposition to the PLO peace talks. That is why they came out, is literally to derail the peace talks.
So and they went out. You're right. You're absolutely right about that.
They went out and they started suicide bombing cafes and buses on a weekly basis, a daily basis, and they were successful, frankly. So Hamas from their inception, has their singular goal is to not have peace, but to basically, there's no compromise for them. It's only kill everybody there, remove them all. You know what I mean?
So let me explain this to you. This is actually, we are very close to having the exact same understanding of the situation. So the reason why I brought up Hamas and its founding charter in 1988, which is like expel all the Jews, like kill all the Jews, or whatever the fuck they said, like the radical, violent shit that they said in their founding charter, is because Hamas, out of all of the militant factions that some were violently resisting against the Israeli occupation, some of which were actually interested in a peaceful solution, like the one that you just mentioned with Yitzhak Rabin, the PLO, Yasser Arafat, the official recognition that, that there was peace negotiations that would finally feature Palestinian voices at the table, changed a lot of Palestinians' minds on the issue. So Oslo in and of itself was already a non-starter agreement, in my opinion. A lot of Palestinians felt like that was fucked up. Like the conditions that were offered in Oslo were completely inconsiderate to the needs and demands that Palestinians were making. However, the two-state solution in that time frame, going from Oslo to Camp David, is directly responsible for Hamas gaining more prominence amongst the Palestinian population, never really being anywhere near close to the level of popularity that Yasser Arafat enjoyed in the first elections that happened, which was an 83% governing mandate, unimaginable popularity, which to me signals that the Palestinians were always on board with believing that Israel would offer them a favorable negotiation. And yet, time and time again, every single Israeli government, every single negotiations committee utilized the two-state solution, dangling it like a carrot, simultaneously offering very little to the Palestinians, having red lines that were considered non-starters for Israel, like Israel's own demographic concerns, while maintaining while simultaneously expanding rapidly and partitioning off different parts of the West Bank, which was occupied territory. So from the eyes of the Palestinians, they saw this as yet another instance where, okay, well, we're trying to negotiate with Israel. Yasser Arafat is trying to negotiate with Israel, and yet they're not giving us anything. They keep pushing us. They keep blocking and pushing, and using this as a means to continuously build settlements and continue pushing out Palestinians in the West Bank. And that's precisely what happened over this multiple decades long process. So I do not fault Palestinians for looking at the situation and thinking, well, what the fuck are we supposed to do? Another turning point was obviously the Israel pulling out of Lebanon. This was another pivotal moment where a lot of Palestinians were like, okay, well, Hezbollah violently resisted Israeli occupation, and that occupation became too costly for Israel, so they had to pull out. Meanwhile, on the other hand, we are still occupied, and our leaders are trying to work with Israel, and the leaders that are trying to work with Israel have been given weapons, have been given training, and then they use those weapons and that training to maintain some semblance of civil governance, but that civil governance isn't actually real civil governance. It's simply being used against Palestinians. So that is the reason why Yasser Arafat's influence waned over the course of this multiple decades-long process, where everyone saw him as an incredibly corrupt figure by the end of it, and were looking for any other option that would possibly offer them real emancipation, real results. The goal for both Hamas and any other violent movement has never been to, like, wipe out every Jewish person around the world or whatever. And it's always to make this occupation as costly as possible. This does not mean that they're good guys. I would not say that. I do not agree with Hamas. I think that their actions were very brutal, especially on October 7th. Okay. But having said all of that, the goal always is for them to make this occupation as costly as possible so that Israel cannot maintain it.
Right. But again, I'm not, again, without drawing conclusions about who's right and who's wrong. Broadly, I agree with the Palestinians. I think it's worth saying in terms of them being fucked over, obviously the hardest, and being the most entitled to peace and reparations and land and stuff. But again, okay. Let's go back. So Hamas was created in opposition. You say the peace talks back then wasn't even realistic. So yeah. This is during the most magnanimous time in Israel's history, where everybody thought peace was possible, and even the beloved prime minister, who was considered a dove, this was the offer. And so again, not good enough. However,
well, yeah. Also the dove himself was like he was okay.
However, looking at now, I'm just being real. Like, you have to see how impossible it is. It's just a non-starter. It's just a non-starter with Israel. It will just never, ever, ever happen. And another question I have to ask you, I guess, going along, is like, do you think a lasting peace is possible while Hamas is in power?
I think that in order for Hamas to actually be dealt with appropriately and for it to no longer exist, the major goal of Hamas needs to be eviscerated, which is a secular democratic republic would completely destroy any kind of legitimate need for violent emancipation. It's over at that point. There's no, like, without the apartheid, there's no reason for any of this to exist.
You're saying if they lift the blockade, Hamas will just dissolve.
Hamas in and of itself is already not a very popular entity, both in Gaza, but I guess ironically a little bit more popular in the West Bank as years have passed by. The only group that is less popular than Hamas in the eyes of Palestinians, however, is the Palestinian Authority. To me, this is Israel's arrogance, the way that the Israeli governments under Netanyahu and under even more peaceful, supposedly more dovish leadership like even Ehud Barak, the Palestinian Authority has always been used as a part of the Israeli security apparatus. The Palestinian Authority collaborates with the Israeli government. They actually give up resistance members. They literally give up random Palestinians to the Israeli government so they can be unlawfully detained. This, of course, has created in the minds of Palestinians a anger towards like the one group that is supposed to be collaborating with Israel. Israel had every opportunity throughout this time frame to show that the secular Fatah party was actually not simply a cutout that is simply there to oppress Palestinians, but with a Palestinian face, but instead like offered genuine security assurances, genuine security commitments, and a good faith interest in like not continuously expanding in the West Bank. But they didn't do that. They did the exact opposite, dangling the two-state solution as a carrot while simultaneously continuing on with their expansive policies in the West Bank.
I don't believe you answered the question. Do you think a lasting peace is possible while Hamas is in power?
Hamas will not be in power if there is lasting peace. That's my point.
Okay. So you're saying, well, no. The lasting peace doesn't come first. First, you have to deal with Hamas.
You cannot deal with Hamas by bombing Gaza. You can only deal with it in it's a political problem.
So how do you do politics with a terrorist group like Hamas?
Well, Israel has done politics with Hamas many times over. There has been ceasefires in between time and time again. So that's not even even if we're having this conversation, Israel itself has been able to.
First of all, agreeing to a humanitarian ceasefire.
No, I'm not talking about like a humanitarian pause. I'm talking like ceasefires in between different sieges that have occurred into Gaza.
Okay. A ceasefire is different from having a peace partner. Right.
A ceasefire is different than having a peace partner, but that is one form of negotiations, is what I mean. And so also, not only that,
it's such a big difference. I don't think it's fair to say that Hamas.
I mean, there's more. There's more
with Israel. Do you think Hamas would be a good partner in peace with Israel?
No, I do not. I do not believe that Hamas would be a good peace partner with Israel. I also do not believe Israel is a good peace partner for Palestinians in general. I think that that is the most important part.
We agree.
So
But
here's
again,
the thing. But here's the thing. Hamas in and of itself.
Just again to draw it back to that is that the one-state solution will never happen, and starting from there is a non-starter. That's my thesis. But go ahead about Hamas.
Okay. So here is what is important to understand. And this is not just my assessment. This is the assessment of the likes of Norm Finkelstein as well. And it's backed by actual sentiment expressed by Likud party members, but of course Benjamin Netanyahu too. Hamas's and its existence as a violent Islamist fundamentalist cutout greatly benefits thwarting any kind of Palestinian nation-state project. This is not my design. This is the design of the Israeli government. This is something that Benjamin Netanyahu has openly mentioned time and time again as well. Last time around in 2019, where he said, if you want to thwart a Palestinian nation statehood, what you must do is only govern against Hamas, because everyone sees them as terrorists. Everyone sees them as violent Islamist fundamentalist terrorists. And we can always deal with Hamas because we control how high the flames go.
Who else is there to talk to?
There are plenty of first of all, there are actual leaders within the Palestinian movement that you could prop up, like the Palestinian Authority, instead of utilizing Fatah as
that's what that's what they want to do. But like, I mean,
no, they don't want to do that either.
I think the goal is to remove Hamas and install the Palestinian Authority. But
yes, but the Palestinian Authority is deeply unpopular and is seen as a puppet of the Israeli government.
Will not accept the PLO because they'll look like stooges to the Israeli government.
Yes, because they are the stooges of the Israeli government. So then
who is leading these? So if the wall is lifted up, so who's in charge? Is it Hamas? Is it the PLO? How is this happening?
At this stage, before the walls are lifted up or anything, what needs to happen is a ceasefire, okay? So that there can be an actual continued negotiation to release the hostages, right? That's number one. First and foremost, hostages need to be released. So first you need to do a ceasefire. Then you need to do a prisoner swap, a hostage release for the
you're starting too far back. Let's just go to the point where you know what I mean?
And then beyond that, what needs to happen is, just like it happened in 2006, which was genuinely disastrous, even though it was a Bush-backed election. Elections need to take place and Palestinians need to get security assurances from the state of Israel. Israel has to show good faith for the first time since its inception, so that Palestinians can have a normal political process and be able to actually vote for a group of individuals that would lead them in civil governance without worrying, becoming a militant faction. In this process, I do not believe that it would be Hamas that wins out. Most Palestinians do not consider Hamas to be good at civil governance in general. They are not as popular as Israel makes it seem they are. They're simply the only option the Palestinians seemingly have in retaliating violently against Israel in times when Israel violates the ceasefire protocols by doing a steady maintenance of the apartheid structure that it maintains. Anytime Sheikh Jarrah is raided, anytime Al-Aqsa is raided every year, anytime there's a Flag Day protest that occurs in Jerusalem, like, these are all incredibly violent expressions of the apartheid regime deliberately turning around and stoking the fires in the West Bank against people that have no legal recourse, against people that are led under military mandate.
I agree with everything you're saying. But to go back to go back to the original point, don't you think it's more likely? Like, I think this is infinitely more likely, even though it's very difficult, especially now. But to remove all the settlements, just fuck all of them off, those scumbag freaks. Give it back to the Palestinians, and you can do the security assurances and the negotiations and all of that, while Palestine has its own sovereign country. And like, I think in the original idea, there was even going to be There was
I
going to
think
be
that that's more violent than a one state. Like, you think Israel would be able to successfully take out 471,000 settlers living in the West Bank, and
you think
also
that
another
Israel could, you think,
300,000, almost 300,000 more plus living in East Jerusalem as well, which is occupied, but now also permanently under Israeli rule.
do
Like
you, you think that fully integrating the populations would be less violent? I
yes,
don't,
I
I
do.
just, dude, there's no way. Like, all it takes is one thing. We've seen this time and time again in the history of this region. Like, it just takes one thing of like a bunch of psychotic Jewish fundamentalists going and doing horrible fucking acts, and then the Palestinians respond by doing horrific acts, and then you got to all out. It takes so little to create all out war.
I
It's so
agree.
little, dude. So
I
little.
agree, which is why there needs to be an international presence and a steady steady pressure to ensure that that there is political pressure applied on specifically the Israeli side to ensure that there's a lasting peace process. This has happened time and time again. It happened in the dissolution of the apartheid state. It happened with the Good Friday Agreement, that ended the Troubles, and it always will happen, because I believe that no matter how much we fight, I think peaceful solutions are our natural state. We want to fucking coexist with one another. And the example I always use is when you look at Europe, right, which is a borderless utopia now, like the EU, the European Union, there's freedom of movement. Those guys have fought one another since the cousin fucker days for far longer than they've actually peacefully coexisted with one another. And now it seems impossible to think of a time when these guys would kill one another for 100 years, right? I mean, World War II happened not that long ago. The Holocaust happened not that long ago. And now when you think about it, Germany can peacefully coexist with all of the other surrounding countries. So
is that the timeline we're on, like 100 years or something?
It would take multiple decades, but it's not like, I mean, it happened almost instantaneously after World War II. I mean, when you look at like civil governance in Germany, it was almost instant.
You mean after a horrific world war where like tens of millions of people died and countries were forever changed and traumatized, then they were able to create a lasting peace?
Yes. And that does not happen. That does not need to happen.
Okay.
No, I'm saying even in a situation like that, you can find
parallel
peace.
To the Middle East?
Even in a situation like that where millions died, right? Millions, tens of millions died, you can still find lasting peace almost overnight. And that's precisely what I'm saying. That's precisely what I'm saying. It's perfectly reasonable to assume. It's perfectly reasonable to assume, as long as there is international pressure, and that there is accountability and control, and a committee designed specifically to dish out punishments for war criminals on both sides, according to the International Criminal Court, when there's a Truth and Reconciliation Committee in a similar capacity to the aftermath of World War II, and there's reparations afforded and a right to return to Palestinians, there will be no need for violence. This has happened in the past, and it can happen again. It seems unlikely because we're very conditioned to thinking like, oh, what is going on right in front of my eyes is exactly how things have been in my lifetime, and it can never change. Except it absolutely has changed, and it absolutely can change, and it will change. And that's why I use other historic examples like I mentioned, Ireland or the ANC and apartheid South Africa. These happened in our lifetime.
If you look at peace in Europe, I think this was possible from rising from the ashes of a ruined continent where unspeakable horrors that people didn't even think were possible occurred, capped off with a nuclear bomb. And by the way, Europe, the characterization of Europe as a utopia is interesting. But I want to say this. You saying sanctions against America or sanctions against Israel, you think would influence Israel to drop their borders. How have sanctions against Russia been going?
Thank you for saying that. Russia is a foreign adversary that has always positioned itself with the full knowledge that support from America, or support or a trade relationship with America is always on an uneven footing, right? So Russia, as an economic power, has never had to rely on America being able to meddle in their affairs in any meaningful capacity. Sanctions against our enemies, our foreign adversaries, oftentimes do not work. As a matter of fact, it's a means to galvanize the existing regime and its brutality. It doesn't work against Iran. It doesn't work against
Israel
Russia.
Israel can forge the same alliances.
No,
you
it
think
can't.
China and Russia and North Korea and whoever the fuck else gives a fuck? You know what I mean?
No, it can't. I don't think so.
It can and it would.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Especially because like the quality, look at the quality of life in like a North Korea, for example. If you're permanently isolated from the rest of the Western world, right? It's not something that Israelis that are used to like a relatively comfortable existence, especially like one that with such close association to the Western world, would ever be on board with.
Dude, Israel is extremely resourceful. They've proven that from their inception. There's no way they will ever drop the border of their sovereignty. It will never ever happen. I understand everything you're saying, and I think what you're saying is interesting about, like, you know, potentially over a long span of time strengthening diplomatic ties with the neighboring countries and stuff. I guess it's possible, you know, in like 50 or 60 years that the landscape could be so vastly different than it is now that maybe if I were to be there and see it then, I could be like, okay, maybe this can work. But as of right now, looking at the situation, I can tell you, as someone who's lived in Israel, as someone who knows tons of Israelis, it will never happen. The Jews, they said, they came out of Europe and they said never again. I know a lot of people find it ironic because of what they're doing to Palestinians. I'm not defending them, but they believe that. They went to Israel and they hold on, and they said never again. And they fucking made nuclear bombs and they made a big ass army, and they fucking believe that shit. Trust me on that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I do trust you. I hear it. I see it. I know. You cannot maintain a apartheid regime without like a steady flow of constantly reinforcing that through propaganda. A steady flow of propaganda is a necessity. That's precisely the reason why a lot of these positions are learned and reaffirmed time and time again. And I completely understand that. I'm just simply stating that like that perspective can be dealt with through the things that I just mentioned: the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, an honest effort in international pressure and international support, where it's an absolute necessity. Because the other side of this process will be assuming that the Palestinians will be quietly ethnically cleansed without like the international community refusing to see that in the same way that like Western leadership thinks that they can just suppress it as best as they can. This spells a lot of trouble and destabilization for Israel more than anything else. Like every single time Israel increases the pressure, every single time Israel has increased the pressure, it has led to more commotion, more chaos, and more devastation for Israel. October 7th is a direct consequence of that. You can never maintain an apartheid state forever. It just doesn't happen.
I want to emphasize, I'm not moralizing anything I'm talking about. I'm just from pragmatics, because, like, I don't know, if you in 1981, America was giving Israel almost 10% of its economy. Mm-hmm. Okay, in 2020, the current aid they're getting is about $4 billion. Is that right?
It's more than that, but I mean, just the military aid alone is $4 billion. Yes. 1% of the economy is massive, especially when you're thinking
Not
about
enough for them to fucking remove their borders. Not even close.
No, 1% of the economy is huge, Ethan.
So 1%
Think about it this way.
enough.
Think about it this way.
Okay.
The UAW strike was supposed to. The UAW strike on the big three was slated to eat away at I think like what 5% of all of the states. Like that would have been devastating. It would cause economic collapse. And sanctions don't mean just like the direct aid. Sanctions don't mean like direct. Sanctions don't necessarily just mean like all the weapons that we're giving to Israel. It also means like stopping companies from working with Israel as well. Like this is how sanctions operate.
I feel like, in a sense, Israel's become, they really, with the amount of tech and like inventions and IP shit they have, I feel like it would be really hard for a lot of companies to sever those ties. And Pegasus is just one good example of it.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying, but it absolutely can happen. It's
1% is enough to convince Israel, who is afraid that they'll be genocided.
No, 1% is just the weapons, the amount of weapons that we're giving, because it would be significantly more damaging to their GDP. Here, this is a good take. Yeah, Polygon Primitive says the 2008 collapse was a 4% GDP contraction. So like that was that led to the 2008 collapse. 1% is simply just the weapons that we're giving, like the Iron Dome and things of that nature, like the Tamir interceptor missiles and stuff. So beyond that, it would be far worse than that. But also, before we even talk about like Israel's economy with American contributions, according to the Financial Times, Israel's economy is slated to collapse already. I think Standard & Poor's warned Israel even before the bombing campaign started that if they were to try to maintain a steady occupation of Gaza, that their credit rating would change dramatically, because 300,000 reservists and all of these Merkava tanks and all of the rockets that Israel is utilizing, no matter how much America gives them support, is obviously going to have a long-lasting and damaging impact on the Israeli economy. So even without like Israel's economy at this moment is already in a troublesome situation, even without boycotts and even without sanctions, just simply on its own. So I don't think that it's as I don't think that the situation is as.
Again, you have to acknowledge that to Israelis, the dissolution of its border is literally the genocide of them. They will all die. That's how they feel. So whatever percentage you think matters, if it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I cannot emphasize how fucking little it will matter to Israel ultimately if the question is dissolve your borders. It will never happen, ever. They think if they do that, they will all die. That's the perception in Israel. That's what they think. And you cannot convince them otherwise. You can't.
No, you can. And you can. I think you can, especially because, like I mentioned.
Have you been to Israel?
No, I have not, Ethan. But I'm not talking about.
Do you know what the Israeli perspective is?
I do. I do talk to my Israeli counterparts. I've talked to Ofer Kasif. I talked to.
Have you lived through daily suicide bombs in cafes and bus stops? Or
as a matter of fact, I have. I grew up in Turkey, but that's a different point.
Okay.
Yes, I have experienced that 100%.
Okay, in Israel. So
no, not in Israel, but in Turkey, I have.
I know. I'm talking about Israel. So, okay, fair enough. You've experienced that in Turkey. Do you think that you can understand without being there and without living there, like that you can convince them otherwise? I don't understand I don't understand where that confidence comes from. How you can make
the
that
confidence
statement.
comes from my belief that the morally just thing. Like, I will always unflinchingly support the morally just cause, right? No matter what happens. If we talk about the practical application, yes, there is going to be people that are resistant to that. Maybe even people who want to engage in acts of terror against that on the Israeli side, especially. But ultimately, these are solvable problems because I look at the material realities on the ground. Without American support, without Western support, unconditional support, and trade, Israel would not be able to maintain an apartheid regime, just like South Africa was not able to maintain its apartheid regime. And as long as there is more pressure from the West, this will most likely change if America finally does the righteous thing for once in its fucking life. Now, having said that, okay.
By the way, and I just need to make this clear because you keep saying that you support the moralistic thing. I support the moralistic thing too. I'm talking pragmatics here. I'm telling you that the one state is a non-starter. That's my point.
The pragmatism
I don't have chat open. I don't know what people are saying, but I can only imagine the fucking psychotic take.
Well, don't pay attention to what people are saying. Don't pay attention to what people are saying.
If there's people watching this who are just seething, I'm just telling you this is just what it is. What I'm explaining to you is what it is. And and I believe that people need to reckon with the reality of the situation to actually approach this into a meaningful conversation. Because again, I can't emphasize how much the one state thing is impossible from the Israeli perspective.
Yeah.
But you talk about sanctions. I mean, if you look at Russia,
Russia and Israel are not.
Hold on.
Russia and Israel are not the same.
Of course, they're different countries. Western leaders, they all predicted there would be a total collapse of Russia's economy, but all that happened was it made them more nationalistic, it made them more resolved, it made them basically search out new partnerships. And I don't think that there's any evidence that Israel would be unable to do the same things.
Because the only times where a sanctions regime
doesn't need America.
The only time the sanctions regime has ever worked is if it's threatening our allies. That's it. We can actually sanction our allies. We cannot sanction our enemies in a way that like stops them from finding a way to continue surviving with the same quality of life. Israel is a democracy for Israeli Jews, right? It's not a democracy for the Palestinian citizens of Israel.
I don't know.
What's up?
I think this idea that sanctions would change anything is
because it would dramatically change the quality of life.
What's the evidence of that? When has that worked?
I gave you the evidence. It worked in South Africa. The fear of sanctions alone and businesses pulling out of South Africa alone was enough to change the attitude on the ground. It did work. And not only that, but also I'm using this as an example because Israel was allied with South Africa. And they personally saw how successful this was in South Africa, which is why AIPAC made it.
Apartheid is completely different than the situation
Why is it completely different?
Okay, well, Israel, first of all, again, the Israelis believe that they will all be killed. So they're fighting for their survival.
The South African white population also believe that 100%.
They also have like a ton of I feel like they have a lot of leverage in terms of their
everyone who has historically been the oppressor has always believed that once that oppression is not maintained, that the retribution will be just as violent, if not worse. And history has never shown an example of that. In the way that it actually has like been an incredibly violent retribution.
Like, so you're saying, are you saying sanctions was singularly responsible for ending apartheid?
No, of course not.
And so what percentage of it would you say?
I don't know what the exact percentage with the sanctions would be, but all matter of conflict ultimately ends with a peaceful solution. No matter how violent the conflict is, it ends up with a negotiations process, right? So I don't know what the exact percentage. I don't know what the exact percentage of the sanctions was, but of course, on the ground, violent actions was also a major factor in making this apartheid as costly as possible. But yes, international support being pulled out of South Africa was a gigantic burden for the South African economy, which forced the hands of South African politicians that wanted to maintain the apartheid into making a new arrangement finally.
Do you think the global politics, geopolitics is that we see in the world today is comparable to what we saw then?
No, because I think the collapse of the USSR also was playing a role in that process.
Because don't you think that like there's different allegiances and groups of nations forming, and one of them will take in Israel. There's just no shot.
The
China,
idea,
Russia,
the
North
idea that
Korea,
the idea that someone might take in Israel is insignificant in this circumstance. You know why? Because the quality of life that Israel has afforded to at least Jews inside of Israel proper is one that people do not want to take away. This is the major difference. If you live in a country like Russia, your government is already positioned against America sanctioning you before America even sanctions you. So you can withstand sanctions. Israel, on the other hand, has never considered the quality of life shift that would be seismic if there was Western sanctions upon Israel. It's just like, it's untenable. There's no way out of it. There's no like, oh, we'll just like deal with China and then China will defend us while we still maintain the same quality of life.
They'll sell them arms. They'll you know what I mean?
I'm not saying that there aren't.
There'll be a valuable exchange of goods, ideas, IP, weapons. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, certainly.
And by the way, Israel, I say this because people really need to understand how much they think that if they dissolve the borders, they will all be killed. They will use a nuclear bomb if they have to.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. It's like saying we can't fucking raise taxes on the wealthy because like they'll just pull out and go somewhere else. Like that's nuclear holocaust being an option in this situation is like a ridiculous one. Like
I only say it because the only way I see this happening is a all-out war. That's the only way. And Israel, in that case, if they were on the back end of losing an all-out war, they would use a nuclear bomb.
By the way, as far as the apartheid regime goes, I believe Israel was one of the countries that actually continued to support South Africa through the embargo.
I know that. They had a
but it didn't work. It didn't work, right? Like at the end of the day,
I'm not defending Israel. I know Israel.
I'm not saying this to defend Israel. I'm saying it didn't work.
They had a joint operation with the South Americans to build nuclear bombs. I know they love them. Thank you. So I'm not.
No, that's not what I meant. The reason why I mentioned that is because South Africa had allies as well, but they lost Western support. And when you lose Western support, you cannot.
Israel's not gonna give them.
Without
alone,
Western support,
it's not enough support from nations to make a significant.
No, it
difference.
is. It 100% is. If you are maintaining pressure on an ally, their economy will crumble so fucking fast that they will never ever be able to withstand it in the same way that a foreign adversary can. A foreign adversary can greatly diminish their quality of life because their quality of life is already not up to standard if you compare it to like Israel and the many benefits that Israeli citizens have and enjoy. That is a genuine political problem. That is a major political problem, which is why people will say sanctions only work on allies. They don't work on foreign adversaries. Like Israel, the Israeli population would not in a million years take a massive seismic shift in their quality of life. A lot of people would fucking probably straight up leave.
They would. You don't understand. No. They would. They would take the seismic shift. They would. That's the thing that you don't understand. They would. And you know what I mean? They would. I know. People underestimate what the fuck Israel means to the people that live there.
My point is always this. If BDS wasn't a genuine threat that Israel noticed and thought was like a legitimate threat, they would have not.
What does South Korea have to do with the conflict?
No, boycott, divestments, and sanctions on the state of Israel.
Oh, okay. Just BTS I do stand them.
Yes, we stand BTS. Don't get mad at us, please. But BDS in and of itself was originally. I've been throwing them up too. BDS, boycott, divestments, and sanctions, which is controversial because like sometimes sometimes it does over leverage, overextend itself for sure. and like goes after like random fucking groups and whatnot. But like as long as it's like steadily maintained, boycott, divestments, and sanctions is a successful way to apply pressure to Western governments, to apply pressure to the state of Israel, just like it worked against apartheid South Africa. And that is precisely the reason why, because it worked against South Africa.
It wasn't the sole reason, first of all.
It wasn't.
One of many. One of
I
many.
never said it was, but it
But
was
again,
a major
you're
reason.
using it as an example, like a silver bullet, like that. Yeah, they did sanctions, so apartheid ended. It's just not the same thing.
Well, the reason
Israel,
why I'm using that
anyway,
as an
I think
example,
we're going on and on about the sanctions too much, because the thing is, I guess we're at a bit of an impasse in that, like, on one hand, looking at the two-state solution, I understand, there's so many fucking settlers now, and the government in charge of Israel has Netanyahu, basically, and his cabinet, have gone so fucking far, have done so much damage to the cause of peace by encouraging and arming these psychotic freaks that are out there, the settlers. Fucking, they are real villains. So it does seem, Israel they have removed settlements before, but not nearly that much, obviously. And so,
I mean, the only time they removed settlements was in 2005 when they pulled out of Gaza, and then they resettled those people in the West Bank.
right.
So like that had happened. That was a big political move too that a lot of people were upset about.
So I don't know, it's tough because both options seem so fucking far-fetched because of the damage that's been done by Netanyahu's cabinet and him in the West Bank. That both of them seem so far-fetched.
This is, by the way, the settlements of the West Bank is precisely the reason why I'm saying that like a one state already exists currently, whether we like to admit it or not. It is a one singular apartheid state, which is why I believe in the dissolution of the apartheid.
But then if you're talking about integrating Hamas and PLO into the Israeli government.
Yes, just like I'm talking about integrating Jewish. That's why I'm talking about integrating the Jewish Power Party and many of the other far right Israeli components in Israeli society that actually enjoy great civil liberties currently, integrating them into society as well. In the United States of America, we have a lot of problems, right? We have a lot of issues. We have a lot of racism, for example. We live in a white supremacist nation. And yet, if the conditions for the Palestinians reflected the conditions of black people right now in the United States of America, this would be an unimaginable improvement than living under an apartheid regime. If the conditions, I used Turkey as an example before. I have long been a supporter of Kurdish people in developing a nation state for themselves. 35 million Kurdish people live in diaspora. I believe that they have a right to have a nation state for themselves in this region. And I think that there's a tremendous number of Kurdish people that are oppressed in the country of Turkey, okay, inside of Turkish borders. If the treatment of Kurdish people in Turkey resembled the treatment of Palestinians in Israel in a singular secular nation state, this would be a dramatic improvement on their quality of life. It would be celebrated by the Western world as a tremendous accomplishment. People would literally be celebrating it in the fucking streets. They'd be like, this is it. We did it. So this does not mean that like Kurdish people are not mistreated in Turkey. They certainly are. But that's how poor the structure is currently in the singular apartheid regime in Israel.
I think you've definitely said stuff that I hadn't thought about in terms of like how a one state would be possible, and certainly thinking about it on like a long term over like maybe a 50-year span, then it really seems more likely that something like that could happen. But I don't think that people who discuss this, I don't know what's the right word because I know it's so sensitive with like leftist and liberal and all this shit. Like, so I don't like fucking saying all that shit. But people who are, and I don't even want to say pro-Palestinian activists either, because I mean, I can say that maybe. Can I say pro-Palestinian? Because I feel that I advocate for the Palestinian people too. But my perspective is just that I don't think the people who talk about this understand how far Israel will go to make sure that that never happens.
I do. I oftentimes don't want to showcase like the full-blown Israeli perspective on this matter in an effort to save face, because I understand precisely how dangerous and how violent the rhetoric actually is, and how right-wing the rhetoric actually is, because like just like in the United States of America, if you look back at like I don't know, the sentiment expressed towards black people in the civil rights movement, like yeah, there is a steady flow of misinformation and anger that builds up and resentment that builds up on the side that is the party in power, that has to exist so that you can maintain the structures of inequality. This has historically always been the case, and yet when all is said and done, we have the capacity to adapt, and no matter how violent the perspectives of Israelis might be, and there is still always going to be a way to prove to every single person that the best permanent security solution is one that revolves around offering Palestinians a life of dignity. This also, by the way,
and
discounts the two-state solution.
People do understand that. It's just getting there is the fucking problem, you know. Obviously.
No, I get that. I mean, I
think it's funny when people go, I see this clip going around the internet all the time where they go like, Israel versus Palestine, it's not complicated. It's super simple. And I've seen you say it. You say apartheid, is it good? Yes or no? Obviously no. And that's not the hard part about this conflict. Everybody can easily tell you apartheid is bad. The hard part of this conflict is deciding what the fuck to do about it. And in that regard, it is extremely complicated.
Yes. Here's the thing, though. I think that you are surrounded by people who are very like-minded in many respects. So you don't see the other side of the conversation, because a lot of people do say that Israel's not an apartheid, and it is actually very complicated. That they're not talking about the solution.
Hold on. What side is it you're saying I'm not exposed to, or which side am I overly?
I think you're talking to like-minded people like myself, more so than I guess like people who you're talking to people who already have like established that Israel's an apartheid state, because the overwhelming majority do not consider it that.
I agree, and that's why it's important to frame these kinds of conversations, because I understand that the rhetoric, mainstream rhetoric in Israel and in America, is way, way, way to the right of where we're talking now. So I understand that. Some people might look at this conversation and say that like you're missing the point. I know that. I'm trying to engage in a good faith discussion. I don't need to acknowledge people that are like, oh, we need to kill all the fucking Gazans. Like, obviously, that's insane. You know what I mean?
But that's not even what we're saying. Like, there are plenty of people who are like, oh, man, I really sure feel bad about the Gazans. But also, like, Israel has security concerns, so they have to eradicate Hamas. Like, I hear varying degrees of this kind of sentiment expressed from, a diverse group of people. And ultimately, a lot of this still revolves around, like, I hate Netanyahu, but we have to keep letting him do what he's doing, even though Netanyahu and what he has done so far in Gaza is simply a continuation of the multiple decades of arrogance on behalf of Israeli politics, assuming that, like, this apartheid regime can be maintained without any severe violent repercussions, not even listening to its own internal security forces like Shin Bet. These guys are not fucking woke, obviously. They're, their job is, Shin Bet, their job is to literally defend Israel's internal security. Like, when you have former leaders and also current existing Shin Bet members tell the Netanyahu government, hey, stop fucking over people in the West Bank, because this is going to cause a major collapse. This is becoming a security issue, to which the Netanyahu government responds with, you're fucking woke, shut the fuck up. The deep state has infiltrated Shin Bet. We're not going to listen to you. When you have, former Israeli leaders saying that, like, this regime is far too brutal at this point to continue without any severe repercussions, and you have 76% of the population saying we want to fucking fire Netanyahu, we want Netanyahu to leave, while simultaneously supporting his actions in Gaza, there's this mismatch here. There's this disconnect. People want some kind of retribution, and that's understandable, a violent retribution, and yet they don't recognize that violent retribution is what causes more violence down the line. This is how Hamas came to power, and it will never. You can never, unless you do full-blown ethnic cleansing, you are never going to be able to take care of this problem through violent means. It doesn't work that way. History has only been solved in the exact opposite direction. But I do want to hear what your perspective is. Like, what do you think is the solution? Because I think you believe in a two-state solution, right?
I just, in terms of what's pragmatic, yeah.
So,
and again, I don't know how pragmatic it is, because even saying it seems so fucking crazy, because like you said, but I think it is. I don't know if it's possible. But just from my perspective, which is that the dissolution of the borders will never ever happen, is that I think that obviously removing the settlers from the West Bank, that's obviously the biggest problem. Like, I don't know how you're going to do that.
So how do you think you can remove 750,000 people living in occupied territory right now, whether it be both East Jerusalem, which is very densely populated, but also within the West Bank, where there is 451,000 people living there?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, you could do it by force, or you could just say you guys are on your own now. Like, this isn't our territory.
Yeah, but don't you think that would be incredibly violent? Like,
it would be horrible.
There? And there's also no reason for them to do that, because I don't think that that's what Israel wants. I think what Israel wants historically, or at least what it's shown me and others, Israeli scholars themselves who have changed their perspective from a two-state solution to a single-state solution as well, is that we're just going to keep dangling the peace negotiations in an effort to slowly but surely push out Palestinians from their own ancestral homes, as we did.
You want me to answer the question?
What's up?
Do you want me to answer the question you asked?
Yeah.
So, I believe that that's the biggest problem. But removing them and lifting the barriers of, lifting the walls, creating a Palestinian state. There'd probably need to be. I know in 1948 there was talks about a train that connected Gaza and the West Bank, or something like that. But I don't know. Maybe there'd be some concessions of land there to make it continuous, and also I would be in favor of some kind of reparations too. Now, again, that seems far-fetched. It does seem far-fetched. I give it. It's granted, but like, it's so hard. It's equally hard for me it's harder for me actually to imagine Israel ever conceding.
Do you think Israel would concede to a two-state solution then?
I mean, I think there would be an appetite for it if the situation was, if like the vibes were right, to put it in a silly way. Like, if there was a fair duration of peace and goodwill talks. If you go back again to Arafat and Rabin, even though a lot of Palestinians, I'm trying not to chew gum, a lot of Palestinians were not happy with it. But if you can go back to 1948 and make more concessions, I don't know, man. I don't fucking know. I don't know. They both seem so far-fetched and difficult, if I'm being honest.
Yes.
Because the settler situation just ruins the whole fucking thing. There's just too many settlers.
Yeah,
I don't know.
There are 750,000 total, but 450,000 just in West Bank alone. You want to know the number of settlers that existed in the West Bank in 1977?
What was it?
7,000. So, and in the 90s, that only increased to like what? I don't know what the exact number was. Hold on, I'm going to look this up really quickly. So, let's see, 1990 number of settlers in the West Bank. In the West Bank in 1988, by 1988, hold on, what is the number of settlers in the settlements in the West Bank? According to the Palestinian Central Bureau of Statistics. Wait, what is this? Number of settlers in Israeli settlements in the West Bank region by 1986. By 1986, the West Bank area, excluding Jerusalem, was 60,000. By 1990, it was 88,000. And then if you included Jerusalem, it reached up to 132,000. So in the 1990s, this number continuously grew to 100,000 to grow and grow and grow, and only continued to go through this peace process. Starting the peace process around 88,000, and I guess like now arriving at 456,000 in the West Bank, and then 232,000 in Jerusalem. So when you look at these numbers,
the Israeli government really fucked up.
I mean, they didn't fuck up.
I know it was by design. I know it was by design. They want to. It's easier for them to claim all that land if people are been living there and they're established, and like, you know what I mean, because it's harder to do it. That's why they did it. So,
and in this process, this was, of course, this process was also done deliberately to destroy contiguity in the West Bank. That's why West Bank was partitioned off into 3 separate areas, A, B, and C, and of course, control over the areas that even Palestinians live in is also disputed. Israel took over more than 80% of the West Bank in this time frame, 80%, by saying these are this is a matter of military necessity. B'Tselem has a really helpful guide on this if you want to look at it as well. They have like an interactive map that you can scroll throughout time to see it. And in that process, they set up checkpoints. In that process, they set up 2 specific highway systems where Palestinians could only go on certain roads with a tremendous number of checkpoints versus Israelis could go on all the other roads. And
right, I know, it's horrible. It's apartheid. And it's crazy. But,
so to me, this was the opportunity.
I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe one state is more likely. Maybe I can see it, but like, I just have a hard time reconciling that. But the way that you explained it definitely does make me think that it could be possible over a long period of time. So it would have to be 50 years from now, and we didn't nuke the whole planet, and somehow there's been a period of relative peace and calming of tensions and stuff. Yeah. I can see it. I can see that. But that starts in good faith, and there's always going to be people who want to fuck that up. But even if the one state, there's still going to be these radical, fundamental settlers there that the Palestinians are going to want to fucking kill, rightfully, right? Or I mean, I don't killing people isn't right, but there's going to be fundamental Islamists. No, there's
exactly, absolutely. Yeah. You're right about that. Except there are. This is something that I talked to Jank about because I think Jank's understanding is like kind of childish of the matter. He always says like, "Oh, it's religion." It's Jank.
Jank for president, bro.
Yeah, Jank for president. He's gonna do it. He's gonna do the damn thing.
You're the VP,
but no. But well, I do have I could actually technically run for president. He can't because I'm an American citizen. He's not. He's not a. He's a naturalized American citizen. I am a natural born U.S. citizen. So one thing I want to say is this: he always says like, "Oh, well, it's a religious war." I'm like, no, it's not. Here's obviously it's not. But think about it this way: we have our own versions of psychopathic fundamentalist terrorists, right? We do. And every now and then there's an act of stochastic terror, and that's devastating, and we deal with it through the normal criminal court system, right? That's what will happen. I'm not saying that like it's going to be perfect and everyone's going to get together, hold hands and say kumbaya, okay? That like everyone's going to hug and kiss one another. But what we do have a tendency to collaborate with one another, okay? We do have a tendency to live in peace. That's what we want to do. So ultimately, if there is a structure, if there's a one-state structure, of course there's going to be fucking psychotic like Jewish power people and also Islamist fundamentalists or even people who are like, nah, fuck that. I want to kill settlers regardless. Those guys are going to go to jail. Just like the kickstarting of that process also revolves around making sure that there is a tribunal for war criminals on both sides. Like being able to capture and also bring to justice war criminals on both sides of the equation.
What do you do about the settlements that are there now? I guess you're saying it doesn't matter because everybody can live wherever they want.
The settlements are precisely the reason why I don't believe in a two-state solution, because I don't believe that there is any reasonable way to eradicate 400,000 people and then 230,000 from Jerusalem. Like that, you cannot do that in a peaceful way. You cannot take these people out of there. By the way, you were talking about the Holocaust survivors. The Holocaust survivors is actually a really interesting thing. I didn't even know about this, but you know about this because you lived in Israel. They're some of the poorest people in Israel. Some of them that were moved into settlements in the West Bank as well. But like, I think, what is it? Like 1/3 of every Holocaust survivor that's remaining lives in like abject poverty. So
I don't know that. I mean, there's not a lot of them left.
Yeah.
I don't know about their economic.
No, it's really really fucked up. So like it's, you know, I know that the thing is like, oh, there will be another Holocaust or whatever, but like, you know, Israel should probably look into helping its Holocaust survivors that are still alive at this point, rather than so hornily try to fucking take as much land as possible. This is the whole point.
I agree. Yeah, take care of them, take care of everybody. But you know, it's like, I think it's so fucked up right now. It's crazy how fucked up it is. Both options seem like pipe dreams right now in this point in time.
Like, I'll tell you this much. What changed for me, what I realized was, like, especially in this last iteration, this last like counter to the October 7 tragedy. What I realized was, I guess it made it permanent in my mind, is that the Israeli government, completely removed from the interests of the Israeli citizenship, Israeli citizenry, operates with a one-track mind. They care more about like expelling Palestinians, not always like ethnically cleansing, but ethnically displacing Palestinians from this territory, from the territories they occupy, than they do about the safety and security of the Israeli citizens. I saw this being reflected by those who had been victim to the attacks on Kibbutz Be'eri and other kibbutzim as well. Some of the victims immediately after, while they like were still trying to figure out where their family members were in that hotel in the Dead Sea, and they basically were reflecting on the things that had happened, and they were saying a similar thing, that it's like you care, if you care more about like killing Palestinians or pushing Palestinians into the sea than you do about like the safety and security of the Israeli citizens, like, of course this is going to happen. This is going to continue happening over and over again. And why am I saying this? Because on October 7th and October 8th and October 9th, there were still Palestinian militants inside of Israeli boundaries, right? But what was the first action that Israel engaged in? The first action that Israel engaged in for the first 2 days was immediately to start bombing Gaza. To me, it's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, protect your own borders.
What do you think Israel should have done in response to October 7th?
I think, obviously, overtaking and maintaining permanent security in the southern regions was the first thing to do. The second thing to do would be to, instead of bombing Gaza, unless there is like areas where there's rocket fire coming from, which they trade off time and time again. But instead of indiscriminately bombing Gaza, I think the first thing to do in that situation would be to dismantle the government in the way that it existed, like get Netanyahu out of power.
Okay. So you're saying Israel in response, hold on, dude. You're saying in response to this terrorist attack, Israel should have dismantled their own government.
First set of actions would be to democratically take Netanyahu out of power, yes, and then engage in a hostage release scheme that would then also lead to a larger negotiations process. Absolutely. If they didn't comply, and if Hamas didn't comply,
yes,
then you fucking bomb.
But
then you bomb. Like, it's not my point is always this. Like, I talk to my friends who are definitely a lot more conservative than you are, right? My friends who are, you know, Zionists.
Okay.
who are a lot more
I'm
conservative
not.
in their
I don't
opinion.
know in what way I'm conservative at all.
You're not. I'm saying that I have friends who are a
so
lot
many
more
people
conservative than
mischaracterize me, what I believe. It's
I
really
am not
fucking
saying I'm not mischaracterizing you at all. If I
You're
first of
not.
all, if I thought you were a reactionary on this matter, I would not be having a normal conversation with you. I would be incredibly critical and would be more interested in like yelling and trying to nudge my position across instead of like walking through this step by step in good faith.
Are you wearing baby gloves for me?
No, I'm not wearing baby gloves for you. I think that you are a very kind-hearted person who literally lived in Israel. So you, of course, have like biases, just like I do, right? Biases in the other direction. But you are someone who is ultimately led by empathy. That's not. I'm not saying it's baby gloves at all. I think like if you are faced with
helps that I'm not saying that we should kill all Palestinians. Certainly, that would be a different conversation.
Yes, exactly. But I don't think like this is something that I've explained to my audience time and time again, which was like that you pick your battles. Like there's no reason to fucking people love yelling at whatever is in front of their faces. And I think that you are someone who does have a lot of empathy for Palestinian people. And it is, in my opinion, ridiculous and unproductive to just like fucking spend any time being like, oh, you're bad, you're wrong, like fuck you. That's my perspective.
Since I'm on your stream, I'll just say this. I don't know the majority, but there was like a big portion of your fan base that was, I felt so unfairly and overly over the top, just so nasty that it made me want to disengage from the whole thing. And just like, I just don't understand like what I've done to deserve that level of fucking hate and accusations, other than just trying to like understand the conflict more, or saying that Hamas are terrorists, which I don't know why that's in contention, but
it's because
I don't know what people want. I've even frankly been nudged, I think. Yeah, I could say I've been nudged towards the one state thing. Like it makes more sense to me after talking about it with you. And so I don't know what fucking allies people are looking for. If I'm not a good ally for you guys, then I don't know. Like I'm talking to them because how are we ever going to actually have meaningful dialogues or meaningful peace about this when someone like me is too fucking Zionist or something for you to even talk to? Like
I think a lot of people,
if you can't build a bridge with me, then I don't think you're going to build a bridge with a single person in Israel ever.
I know, I agree with you. I think the reason, I guess, like this is not a defense because I've like criticized people yelling at you regularly, and have told people to you know, have told people to just like think about this critically and understand that there's a broad coalition that is an absolute necessity if you want to make any changes in the political realm, and like that you are not anyone's enemy in this struggle. I've repeated it time and time again. I told like I don't spend a lot of time in Discord, but I've seen you say that, and I've nuked my own Discord.
I appreciate what you've said,
and I think that it's I think ultimately it's silly to yell at someone like yourself on this process, even if there are disagreements. Even if there are disagreements that people might have with you. I mean, but the difference, of course, is it's the same cycle, right? It's the same cycle that you and I experience in other situations in our lives. Like we say something, tensions are high, and then people just like automatically take a black and white position on it, and then they posture.
Not in the studio right now. This is so stupid. We've been talking for like 2 hours. And we could have done the podcast.
I'm the one who told you we could do it. You're the one who said you're sick.
Well, I am sick, but I've been sitting here talking for 2 fucking hours.
Yeah, we could have done it. I didn't even like promote it because I always worry that people are just gonna fucking take advantage of like any kind of conversation we have to like move it in a direction that gives them clout for no fucking reason. I hate that shit. But
so I think maybe I would like to pivot maybe to talking about the from the land to the sea, and maybe trying to explain why from the perspective of Israelis and Jewish people at large, that they see this as a problematic thing to say. I mean, at worst, right?
We can do that, but I have to pee first. Okay, let me pee real quick, and then you can explain your position if you want.
I'll wait.
While I pee.
I'll take over. Guys, everybody watching, go to teddyfresh.com. Black Sale Friday. Black Friday sale is live now, you guys. Up to 60% off. Get over there. teddyfresh.com. Now is your chance more than ever. You've seen Hasan wearing it. It's cool. It's slick. It's neat. teddyfresh.com. Black Friday sale is live now. Now. Yeah, I don't know. The reason I don't like having these conversations is just because, like, dude, it's just not worth it for all the fucking bullshit about, like, the amount of hateful shit I get. And, like, I feel that I try to be really open-minded and, like, open to new ideas. Obviously I'm not perfect, but the shit people say is crazy, man. That is a Garth Brooks reference. I'm reading chat now, by the way. Does Teddy Fresh use slave labor? No. All of our factories are certified humane. There's organizations that certify factories as having good conditions, work conditions, living conditions, pay conditions, age conditions, stuff like that. So they check all this shit off.
All right, I'm back. Okay. All right. You were talking about from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And
okay, so like at worst, the worst interpretation of that would be like someone like Hamas or Hezbollah or like terrorist organizations who are like, yeah, we want to actually kill everybody there. That's the worst interpretation of it. I know that there's a lot of people, obviously, vast majority of people who do say that don't want to kill all the Jews there, right? But like, so at the best interpretation of it, it basically means, as I've said, this one state dissolution of the state of Israel. And a lot of people also see that. I would say the vast majority of people in Israel see that as a genocide. So that it's if it's viewed in that scope. And there's another interesting thing that I've noticed about this. I mean, the thing is, like, that phrase does have a long history of being used by terrorists. And so, you know, wouldn't hold on.
Can I say something though? Because like the terrorism designation here.
Point.
Okay, go ahead. You make your full point.
Let me make my full point here, and then you can respond. There's an interesting phenomenon going on here where, you know, when minorities tell you they're offended by something, usually, especially liberals and leftists, they'll listen because it's not their place, right? They'll say, it's not my place. If you say it, then that's what it is. I mean, Jews make up 60% of all hate crimes in America right now. So when Jewish people look at that and they say, listen, it makes me uncomfortable the way that that's used. I find it interesting that people see that as an opportunity to argue instead of listen. Especially to me, it's like you can make the same argument about the Confederate flag, where Southerners will be like, listen, it's just about our heritage. You know what I mean? That has nothing to do with racism. And maybe, and some people do believe that, right? But at the end of the day, if a black person is like, that Confederate flag is offensive to me, you're not going to argue with them and say, no, it's just heritage. Like, not everybody who uses it is racist. So then, you know what I'm saying? Like, it just doesn't seem fair.
I know, but okay. All right, where do I begin here? So, one, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free its origination, its inception comes from the PFLP, the Popular Front for Liberation of Palestine, which you're right was considered a terrorist.
Existed before Nazis.
Okay.
You know,
hold on.
Just saying.
I understand. I'm going to describe it. Okay.
Go ahead.
in its inception and in its broader context, historically, since the 60s, it has always been utilized as a slogan for emancipation and never for anti-Semitism. The reason why Hamas adopted it, the reason why Hamas co-opted it when they had 3% support as opposed to the PLO, which had 83% support, right? Alongside the PLO, was because it was the slogan that was the slogan for Palestinian emancipation. This does not mean that like that slogan changed at any given point to mean killing all the Jewish people just because it was co-opted by a marginal militant faction that in and of itself has never reached a similar level of popularity to even a two-state solution has historically amongst Palestinians. They've never pulled anywhere near 52% support.
In which part of this do you think it's fair to argue with a group that makes up 80% of all hate crimes that happen in America, or not 80, 60%?
Because
that you can argue with them and say, no, it's fine.
I'm going to tell you. Because, well, two reasons. One, because Palestinians are the oppressed party in the structure against the state of Israel, not Jews, the state of Israel, which does not, I think you and I both agree, does not represent the interests of Jews at all, and will falsely conflate the interests of Jews with the interests of the state of Israel, specifically so they can continue to engage in this argument, sometimes from a disingenuous framing, a disingenuous conflation. Jewish people themselves say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Jewish people are at the forefront of the anti-apartheid, anti-Zionist activism, Jewish Voice for Peace, Jews for Economic. And
the existence of Jewish people doesn't, that point is not very persuasive. I mean, of course there is.
What do you, of course it's, I think it's very important.
Because there's Israelis that say it.
No.
Therefore, a minority or Jewish people shouldn't be offended by it because some people say it. I mean.
No, I think because Jewish people, I'm not going to talk about this as like Jewish people in general. The reason why I brought up Jews for Jewish Voice for Peace and other groups using this as well, like Jews themselves in America using this anti-Zionist slogan, indicates that this slogan isn't one that is about the evisceration of Jews. If that was the case, then they wouldn't use it.
There was Jewish collaborators with fucking Nazis.
Ethan, don't do that, please. Don't say that the Jews' Voice for Peace are akin to capos. Like that's.
I'm telling you that the mere existence of Jewish voices is not a leg to stand on. I don't understand that.
But
of course, there's going to be
failing. But the most important component here,
it's like you're tokenizing a few Israelis. It seems silly.
What, Ethan?
You're like, here, check out my Israeli. He says it.
That's not.
Then I don't find it a good point.
Well, I will explain to you why it's not a comparison, because I think you agree with me on this as well, that it's Palestinian emancipation is just, right? It's just. Whereas the Confederacy is not. The Confederacy was there to preserve, they said states' rights, but it was there to preserve the maintenance of slavery. Palestinian emancipation is not or has not ever been broadly defined at any moment throughout its history, the evisceration of all Jews living in Israel or the forcible expulsion of all Jews living in Israel. Other militant factors that were never, ever as popular as the broader Palestinian emancipatory movement have taken on this slogan alongside slogans like Free Palestine in general.
There's
the same exact argument to say from Free Palestine from the river to the sea can also be applied to Free Palestine as well. It's just a matter of where the motivations lie. You have to look at
how Israelis view it. Is that you're saying that Israel,
I don't care about how Israelis view it. I will admit that I don't.
And Jews at large, I think I think most Jews.
I don't think Jews at large view it. I don't think that is the.
In what position are you to even say that?
Well, I'm in the position of almost entirely getting. I know. My perspective is not
speak for my
motivated by
entire ethnic
myself.
group?
It's motivated
That's
by
crazy to me.
Jews against anti-Zionist
No,
Jews.
seriously, how can you speak for my entire ethnic group? I find that really interesting.
Well, I don't speak for your entire ethnic group.
How many Jews have you polled about if they find that offensive or not?
It doesn't matter if people
You
find
said
it
you
offensive.
know a ton of Jews.
It doesn't matter if Jews find it offensive, Ethan.
Doesn't
That's
matter if a
ridiculous.
minority group finds something anti-Semitic?
Yes, of course, because we're not talking about Jews at all. We're talking about Israel. This is another. This is a conflation between Israel and.
No, in this case, the perception is because that phrase has been co-opted by terrorist groups and it's been used widely by terrorist groups, and the idea that's being communicated. Although we've talked about the one state idea today, and the way that we've discussed it definitely seems like more realistic. But people don't think about it that way. They think about basically the state of Israel disappearing. And when Jews around the world think about the state of Israel disappearing, and there's like a mass fucking genocide of all the Jews there, then yes, they're going to look at that and they're not going to be happy about it.
Ethan, Israel is the party with all of the power in the structure. Palestinians have no power in the structure. I'm going to listen to the Palestinian voices and tell you the historical reference points as to what from the river to the sea Palestine will be free when talking about it.
So
just like
at what point can a phrase be co-opted by a terrorist and then you'd be like, maybe we'll back off that one.
The swastika and the Nazi comparison is actually a wonderful one, and I do not think that the Hamas or any Palestinian group has ever actually reached the machine of ethnic cleansing that the Nazis have. Making that comparison, in my opinion, is like diminishing the impact of the Holocaust.
It's not what they've done or can do. It's about the meaning of it, you know?
Yeah, Hamas also says free Palestine. That doesn't change the meaning behind free Palestine. It doesn't mean anything. What you have to look at is what the broader Palestinians, what the Palestinian movement believes, what the Palestinian movement implies when they're saying this. And it's important. It's important because, like, what are people to do, Ethan? What is the solution here? We say Palestinians can't say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. There's people claiming that even saying a ceasefire is actually against Israel's best interests, or even anti-Semitic, as a matter of fact. At a certain point, you have to realize that, like, maybe it's a little disingenuous, and that it's more so to just like squash any amount of of sentiment expressed towards Israel.
At any point, should you think about maybe I should ease off this because it is offensive to the vast majority of Jews, interpret it in a not nice way, despite what people's intentions are, and that maybe it's counterproductive to double, triple, quadruple down on it.
No, because I'm not going to.
How does that help the cause of Palestinian freedom? When people go,
because I'm not going to, because I'm not going to make concessions that I don't that hold no historic weight. That I'm actually listening to the Palestinians when they say what they mean. Because I don't have this like secret. Because I don't have this like secondary assumption that Palestinians actually are sneakily meaning something else. Like they're like actually talking about the destruction of Jews. I know that's not what you said. I know that's not what you said. You're not saying that. You're not saying that at all. But there are plenty of people who are implying that. And even then, I'm simply stating the historical precedent for this sentiment. And of course, I'm going to combat misinformation. And I'm going to continue combating misinformation in a country that is outright hostile towards Muslims and outright hostile towards Palestinians from the actual state, right? There's anti-Semitism. This is absolutely true. Anti-Semitism is a gross hate crime. It is completely unacceptable. You and I are in agreement on this. I've combated anti-Semitism nonstop for the past 10 years.
There's any people that hear that and they think, you know what? That means no, we got to get rid of all the Israelis. Do you think there's anyone that believes that?
That we have to get rid of all of the Israeli Jews in that area?
From the river
of
to
course,
the sea.
I'm sure. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So,
there are anti-Semites. There are anti-Semites in the pro-Palestinian movement.
Do you think that it could be potentially misconstrued?
Can it be potentially misconstrued? Absolutely. Anything can be misconstrued.
So
Any slogan can be
in
misconstrued.
consideration of all these things, if it can be misconstrued, if it is believed by people to mean it that way, then I don't think Jews are outside of their right to say, hey, this phraseology makes me uncomfortable. And I find it interesting that of all the minority groups, and again, people don't consider Jews a minority because they're white. I only say minority group, or most Jews are white, not all of them. But I say it because 60% of all hate crimes in the United States are against Jewish people that make up like less than 1%. So I find it interesting that when a minority group says like this phrase makes me uncomfortable, and I think the proliferation of this phrase is, you're
saying a minority. You're saying a minority group, but the problem here is this.
I don't think it's fair to just say, "Well, fuck you." I don't
because the conversation revolves around Palestinians, which, Muslims are a minority group in general, Palestinians an even smaller minority group, against Zionists, specifically Zionists who are maintaining the violent nature of the apartheid state in Israel. So in that structure, there are significantly more Zionists in America than there are Zionist Jews, and then there are anti-Zionist Jews. Zionist and anti-Zionist Jews are marginal because of the number of Jews in general on the planet, right? The much larger conversation is being had between Palestinian activists, which feature anti-Zionist Jews and anti-Zionists alike, some of which are anti-Semitic. I'm not going to say that they're not, okay? Versus the much broader, much larger Zionist community that is comprised almost entirely of Zionist evangelicals, Zionist Christians in general. That's the conversation that's being had about the state of Israel. You can criticize Saudi Arabia and do it from an Islamophobic perspective, but many people are never going to turn around and say you're being Islamophobic when you criticize Saudi Arabia. But when you criticize Israel, because the foreign ministry has maintained this position and this posture for a very long time, propped up by the likes of the ADL, this conflation is the immediate counter, and I think it's cynically deployed. Is there real anti-Semitism that occurs?
Deployed.
Absolutely.
It's not cynically deployed. It's not. I mean, maybe some. I don't know. I don't think so. I think
come on, really Ethan. You don't think people are cynically saying something is anti-Semitic? Do you know how many people call me an anti-Semite? There's like literally fucking groypers online who
Jewish people don't like that phrase. It makes them uncomfortable. It's used by Hamas. It's used by the fucking jihadist group, the Palestinian jihadist group. It's used by other extremist organizations. It's been co-opted. At what point? At what level of co-opting do you think it's time to phrase this out?
At what level of co-optation? I told you already. The swastika is a great example of this. The Nazis are gigantic.
It's not racist. So it's not racist until there's like a full mass systemic genocide of Jews.
No, it's not racist until there is a broad movement behind full-blown ethnic cleansing of Jewish people. Yes, even if it's like in support, there is no. In the grand scheme of things, throughout the history of Palestinian emancipation, which I will reaffirm my support for, I do believe it is just and I believe it is moral. Throughout that history, Hamas is but a mere blip, okay? Hamas is but a mere blip, and even to this day is not has never reached broad popularity. Hamas itself is like reinstituted its charter as well. If you want to fucking believe what they're saying, it doesn't matter. But ultimately, the mantra itself predated Hamas and will continue to exist as long as there is an occupation. So having a conversation about the optics of a slogan when 11,000 Palestinians have been ruthlessly slaughtered by that same state is ridiculous to me. I think it's
fair.
It's
this
uncharitable.
Characterization is super unfair. I mean, you're making it sound like I'm a fucking like it's got nothing. The concern for it has nothing to do with what the Israeli government is doing, the ethnic cleansing and murdering of Palestinians. It's got nothing to do with that. Invoking that is not fair. 57% of Gazans, by the way, And I'm not criticizing them. I understand why people would support Hamas during all this who are in Gaza. But you say that, I mean, they have.
Yes, in 2017, Hamas changed its charter in order to gain international recognition.
It has wide support in Gaza and the West.
In 2017, Hamas changed its charter in order to maintain its civil governance factions and also gain international recognition, as had prior terror cells like the ones that you mentioned that Ben Shapiro still considers a terrorist, like Yasser Arafat, as they try to do the exact same thing. You might not believe them. Okay, I do think that there are certainly still anti-Semitic people inside of Hamas, of course, but ultimately, Palestinian people saying that they support violent emancipation.
You think Hamas people that are secular and cool and don't hate Jews?
Do I think there are Hamas militants? Absolutely, yes, 100%.
No, that's not what I asked. I said, do you think there's Hamas people that are like chill and secular and they don't hate Jews?
Oh, 100%. Well, yeah. You can yell at me all day for that. I 100,000% believe it. There are fucking 18, 19-year-olds. They don't know anything except fucking bombs being blown up in their heads. That is simply a means of violent retaliation. I don't think people operate on being bad and being good. I think people operate on, holy fuck, there's a bomb blowing up in my face that killed my fucking family. I hate this fucking state, and I'm going to join whichever faction will allow me to continue fighting against this state. Not every single person is like motivated by like cleansing every Jewish person in Israel. If that was the case, they would not have tried to make a. They would not have tried. Okay, if that was the case, they would not have tried to change their charter and become more. And recenter their posturing so that they can get international recognition. Whether it was going to happen or not is one other thing.
The original one was like insane.
Yeah,
and who the
I agree.
Open this link. I mean, this was just happened last week. If you'll pull this up.
What is this?
It's one
Memory
of the
reports. What the fuck is this? Oh,
it's just a clip of a Hamas.
Oh yeah, this is the Lebanese guy. Okay, so Hamas, just like every other. Just
play it.
I know. I've already played this. He's gonna say we're gonna do 1,000 million October 7th. Yes, I know.
Just play it. I want people to see it.
Okay, here I'll play it right now. I think my dog groomer is outside.
I'll just read it because somebody has to read the.
Okay, yeah, it says because of constitutional security, military, and political catastrophe to the Arabs. I'm reading it to the Arab and Islamic nation. It must be finished.
I can't hear you.
Ethan, this is not the own that you think it is. I've already covered this. I already talked about this.
I just want people to see it.
I know. I've showed this on my stream. I don't know why you think this is like an own.
Well, do you think that every single person watching right now has seen every second of your stream?
I don't know, but okay. I mean, here we'll just probably not. We'll play it again, but I'm simply stating that, like, you know, I'll read it for you if you want. It's not like a. This is not
read
like
it if you're going outside to get your dog groomer. I can read it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Here, I'll just.
Shit! Never mind. The groomer's not even here.
Oh wait, I can't play it on your stream. Never mind.
Yeah, I can play it, but it doesn't matter. Here.
So play it, and if you don't mind, just reading the.
Yeah. The Al-Aqsa flood is just the first time, and there will be a second, a third, a fourth. Because we have the determination, the resolve, and the capabilities to fight. We will have to pay a price, and yes, we are ready for it. We are called a nation of martyrs, and we are proud to sacrifice martyrs. We did not want to harm civilians. But there were complications on the ground, and there was a party in the area with a civilian population. It was a large area across 40 kilometers. The occupation must come to an end. Occupation where? In the Gaza Strip. No, I'm talking about all the Palestinian lands. Does that mean the annihilation of Israel? He says, yes, of course. The existence of Israel is illogical, but there's cuts in there too. I don't even know what the fuck he's saying, but it doesn't matter. He's saying a bunch of fucking psychotic, bloodthirsty shit. I agree.
This is one of the this is a guy I've seen him before. He's a spokesman for Hamas.
Yes, there are multiple different factions within Hamas right now. There are multiple different factions within Hamas right now.
Hold on, let me finish it. The existence of Israel is what causes all the pain, blood, and tears. It is Israel, not us.
Do you want me to talk about it? He's going to say 1 million October 7th as well. It is Israel, not us. We are the victims.
There's only like 10 seconds left.
Okay.
Therefore, nobody should blame us for the things we do.
We are the victims of the occupation, period. Therefore, nobody should blame us for the things we do. On October 7th, on October 10th, on October 1 million, everything we do is justified.
It is justified.
Yeah, he even says it in English. He says, it is justified. Okay? Are you happy? Now, let's talk about it, because you brought this up as though this is like an own or something. One, for as many bloodthirsty psychotic freaks exist in fucking Hamas, there is the same number of non-democratically elected motherfuckers in Israel that say the exact same shit. Dude, you and I are in agreement on that.
I'm not saying this to defend Israel. I'm saying it because I'm just telling you why people are uncomfortable with that phrase, from the river to the sea, because they interpret its use like what this guy is saying, which is that from the river to sea, say to Israel be destroyed, and there'll be no Jews left in the region. Hi, Teddy. How are you, sweetheart? You have a good day?
Okay.
Yeah.
For the record, from the river to the sea is in the Likud charter as well, and they do have the material. Not only do they have the support in their coalition government, but also the material realities reflect that Israel is a genocidal apartheid state. So when they say from the river to the sea,
so this phrase,
this land belongs to Israel. That is a little bit more important. However, I don't even care about that sloganeering. I don't care about what Israel says either. I care about the actions. Okay.
Okay. No. You made a statement defending this slogan, and that's the conversation.
Yes, I still defend it, and I'm still defending it.
Listen, it's got nothing to do with defending Israel or not. I'm telling you how people feel about it. Okay. So at what point does this statement become justifiably anti-Semitic? Your position is that once basically the government has become full-blown Nazis, or I mean, whatever, Hamas or whoever has become full-blown Nazis, only then will it be considered to be anti-Semitic, and no sooner.
No,
that's what you. Okay, no. So when this person's
statements do not speak for Palestinians as a whole, and never has. He doesn't even fucking speak for Hamas. There are two different factions, or multiple factions in Hamas. There's the civil governance branch. No, Ethan, there are literally conflicting factions within Hamas. He is the more militant faction in Lebanon. Like, I'm not even defending these guys, but at least like this is not a defense of Hamas in any capacity. But you have to parse through this. Of course, he speaks for one faction, is what I'm trying to say. So when they are even divided amongst themselves, then like obviously,
tell me, at what point is this phrase allowed to be offensive? When there's I
told you.
So not, you said Nazi Germany.
No, I said the level of popularity and the intentions of Palestinians have never been, historically or in contemporary society, to ethnically cleanse Jewish people out of Israel or ethnically cleanse Jews as a whole, right? Depending on who you talk to on the side of defending Israel or on the side of like genuine concern, expressing genuine concern over a statement like this, it ranges from... Though. It doesn't matter what Hamas's goals is when Hamas in and of itself, in this very moment, has never captured a broad popularity and is literally not, it's not popular. It won't be popular. It will never be popular. There are Palestinian Christians living under Hamas. There are too many different opinions.
Oh, you're sick too? Me too. You feel okay? You think it's because your tooth hurts? Maybe we just got sick, probably. Does your throat hurt? My throat hurts. A little bit. Do you sleep good last night? Nice. You did in the night? We'll have to, we'll take it easy today and hopefully feel better. Oh, no. No fever? Okay, good. When I'm done here, we'll go hang out and take it easy and feel better. Love you.
Okay.
All right.
There's a couple factors to consider here. Okay, like Allahu Akbar means God is great. But for the longest time in American politics, Allahu Akbar was seen as a threat, okay? Considered a threat. A valedictorian literally said one nation under Allah in her fucking speech a couple of years back, and people got mad at her instead of saying one nation under God. We cannot massage our expectations in a morally righteous cause to to tailor the needs, to suit the needs of those who are ostensibly defending the maintenance of an unjust structure. I think it's ridiculous to concede on a point like this, especially as someone who takes anti-Semitism very seriously. I don't think that it's appropriate. Mark Lamont Hill was literally fired from CNN a couple of years prior for saying from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free at the end of his speech at the UN. Okay? This man is a scholar. This man is a historian. He delivered a speech in front of the entirety of the United Nations, and CNN fired him. Why did they fire him?
Well, I'm assuming that you don't believe Israel has the right to exist.
I don't believe Israel has a right to exist as an apartheid state. No, I don't. I don't believe that an apartheid state can continue.
From the river to the sea essentially means the state of Israel is going bye-bye.
The reason why I brought up the historic reference point is because in its charter in 1960, I think it's like 1965, the PFLP that first implemented this slogan literally said they wanted the Zionist entity to be dismantled so that there is a democratic secular state for all Jews living in Israel and all Palestinian Muslim Christians alike. Hold on.
Who said that? TeddyFresh.com, guys. Black Friday sales going on right
Sorry,
now.
I had to get my food. Like,
what are you
do
eating?
you think that
What are you eating?
What? I just got chicken. My dad just made me chicken. Listen.
Your dad made you chicken?
Yeah. Listen. This is important. This is important.
Okay.
So a lot of Israelis, like you also personally mentioned, right, believe that a secular singular state would mean genocide. But you also have been reasonable and have come to terms with the Israeli fears being overrepresented in this conversation. And this is the exact same conversation being played out once again. When I talk about emancipatory movements, I feature the actual people that are being wronged in this process and not the considerations of those who are defending, maybe not directly oppressing those people who are asking for a just cause that are morally on the right side, but those who are defending those who are wronging them. I don't care about the considerations of people who defend Israel in that situation.
The Palestinians are the ones being wronged, which I agree with.
Yeah.
Then they can't be. Then they can use that phrase they can use phrases with impunity about Israel.
I mean, if they said, kill all the Jews, then no, of course not. That's not a phrase that they can use with impunity.
What if they said Israel shouldn't exist?
Israel shouldn't exist?
Israel shouldn't exist.
It depends. It depends contextually. It's entirely about whether or not it is contextually appropriate. It's like the fucking OK sign. Nazis use it, you know what I mean? Right. But contextually speaking, if you hit the fucking OK sign, that doesn't mean you're a Nazi. If someone is talking about Israel cannot exist within the framework that it currently exists, then yes.
How many people are talking about it like that though? Like I know you are, and in like your political circles and stuff, people do talk about that. But when someone out, just in the world says Israel shouldn't exist, I don't think, I wouldn't assume their intentions are always pure. That they're
precisely why I said context is appropriate. Context is
right. But in most
context
contexts,
is
I guess
important. No, I don't think in most context. I don't agree with that. It's like saying America doesn't.
If you say
America shouldn't exist in the way that it does, is like when I say it, it's different. I'm an American citizen. When you and I can say it easily.
Though. Doesn't have any weight. There's no terrorist group trying to fucking kill Americans.
What? Yes, there. Wait, I thought I don't get it. I thought Hamas was crossing the fucking southern border to come and destroy America.
Right.
Like,
well,
I know you're not saying that, but
I know it is crazy that people are saying that. I agree. It's absolutely fucking nuts that they think that. But anyway, that's
where I'm coming from.
I'm just telling you the Jewish perspective. That's why people don't.
No,
when they hear
first
from
of
the
all,
river
no, you're not
to the
telling me the
sea,
Jewish perspective. You're telling me.
I am.
No, Ethan, you can't say it's just the Jewish perspective when
I'm telling you because Jews. I know they're talking about Israel, but when Jews around the world hear someone say Israel shouldn't exist from the river to the sea, which is how it's interpreted, they see that, again, I keep bringing this up, they see it as a genocide.
Okay.
Can
I ask you a question?
I'm just telling you that's what it is.
The perspective of like, like I said, it's not every single Jew or like the Jewish perspective. Jews are not a monolith. I think that it's ridiculous to make this assertion when, like, again, Jews, anti-Zionist Jews, are at the forefront of criticizing Israel and have been using this term in perpetuity, and therefore comparing them to capos is, like, I think very inappropriate.
Dude, no. My point in comparing them is to say you can find support on any movement by anybody. You know, it's just
but that's not a broadly. But that's not like a.
Hey, it doesn't.
That's not a tiny, minuscule percentage of the Jewish population. That's a very important percentage of Jewish scholars. It's a very important percentage of Israeli scholars. It's an important percentage of Jewish people in general.
You're saying that you know that there's a large portion of Jewish people around the world that say from the river to the sea.
Not a large portion of Jewish people around the world, but I don't concern
how many are we
myself.
talking?
I don't concern myself with what Jewish people think about a particular slogan when I'm talking about a particular slogan that is supposed to be, when I'm giving you the historical context of where the slogan comes from, not necessarily like how Jewish people perceive it, especially when Jewish people on either side of this equation are a tiny sliver of the conversation. Anti-Zionist Jews do not make up the broader movement, just like Zionist Jews do not make up the broader movement of defending Israel. It's literally we're living on a planet where
invoking that there's Jewish people that agree with you is I'm just saying I don't think it's a good argument. That's all.
No, I'm simply, the reason why I mentioned that is because if you consider it to be an eradication
that are like in favor of the occupation too.
No, the reason why I brought that, Ethan, and the reason why I think it's a disingenuous framing to compare it to the Confederate flag or to say that Jewish people agreed with like Hitler or whatever, is because you know a lot of these Jews who are anti-Zionist. You probably respect a lot of these Jews who are anti-Zionist. Do you think that they would actually fucking defend a phrase that unironically is pushing for their ethnic cleansing? Do you think that is the case? I ask you in all sincerity.
About a real measurable group of people. You're just using Jewish people as a token.
That's not true.
Then who are these people? You're talking about 100, 200? I mean, what are we talking about?
I'm talking about the tens of thousands of Jews that have been demonstrating on the streets since.
And you've asked them,
October 9th.
How they feel about from the river to the sea. You've polled them on that.
There are literally written. There's so much written articles on this exact same thing, this sloganeering and what it actually means. Yes. They're the ones who are screaming it. They are the ones who are screaming it. Yes.
Really? Show me all the Jews screaming from the river to the sea. I'd like to see a fucking video of that. Even one would actually be quite surprising. Find me one video of a Jewish person screaming from the river to the sea.
Okay.
Go ahead. I mean, I can definitely find you a group of Palestinians or Arabs that are like, no, we should definitely occupy Gaza, and we think that Israel's totally right.
But what difference does that make?
Because I can use them as a token too. It doesn't mean that what.
Wait, what? That doesn't even make sense. That doesn't even, what you just said doesn't even make sense.
Why?
Right here.
Find me a video of a. You know what I mean? Let's see. I want to see all
these.
Here,
this is from Jewish Voice for Peace Action. Here, I'll send this to you as well. The full phrase is from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. If you believe that freedom for Palestinians means eradicating Jews, it says more about you than...
Let me see it before you... Let me see what
this is. Do you think these guys are capos?
It's really... Okay.
Do you think these guys are capos? They're criticizing Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
So let's see.
Stop trying to...
This group, Jewish Voices for Peace Action. What do you know about this group?
What do you mean? What do I know about this group? This is one of the forefront. This is one of the leading advocacy movements of anti-Zionist Jews in this country. Alongside Jewish Voice for Peace, you also have Jews for Economic and Racial Freedom.
But don't you see how fucked up it is to be like, this group of people say it's not offensive, therefore the rest of you shouldn't care about it?
No, you asked. You said, show me a Jew. And I didn't just...
No, show me a Jew screaming from the river to the sea. You showed me a tweet. I mean, on Twitter, people brigade any fucking thing. Like, this is 36,000 likes.
These guys are at the forefront. These guys are at the forefront of anti-Zionist.
Of course there's groups.
Anti-Zionist protests.
Of course there's groups, dude.
Ethan, you asked me, and I gave you an answer, and now you don't like the answer, and now you're saying this is...
The majority of people retweeting that are Jewish?
That doesn't change anything. You asked me to...
Why doesn't it change anything,
You asked me for a particular... You asked me to literally... First of all, there's Jews in my chat right now.
Video. I said, show me a video, not a tweet.
There are Jews in my chat right now that say it all the time. Not that you care, because like clearly, when I show you not just a single Jew, like you asked, but literally
need to rely on that argument.
It's literally an entire movement.
I don't understand why you rely on that argument. It's silly.
You asked me. The reason why I'm mentioning is because do you think these are bad people? Do you think these are?
You brought it up.
Do you think these are anti-Semitic? Do you think that these are anti-Semitic Jews? Like the people that are protesting.
You said there's tons of Jews that are saying this.
Yes, of course.
Show me one video of a Jewish person saying it. You sent me a tweet.
Here to protest.
You said you could find me a video.
I'm gonna literally call up Noah Colwyn to have him say it.
I don't care what one person says about it. I'm talking. You know what I mean?
Here. But you said show me a Jew. I'm showing you
a video of a Jew screaming from the river to the sea.
Okay, I'm gonna call up Noah right now.
I don't want to talk to Noah. I don't give a fuck about who that is. I don't know anything about him.
What do you mean? I'm gonna call him so he can fucking scream it. He can scream it at you.
Okay, no, so
not the Orthodox.
One guy who will scream it. Therefore, dude, this argument you're making is ridiculous.
What do you mean the argument is ridiculous?
That's like saying if I can find a Palestinian to say the occupation is justified, then saying the occupation is justified isn't anti-Palestinian.
No, because the morality behind what he's saying is incorrect. The morality behind what from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free is correct. That's the major difference.
That's not how the Jews see it. They see it as.
Now we're having two separate conversations. We're having two separate conversations. If you and I are both in agreement of Palestinian emancipation, which you say you are, and I believe you, then why would, if you believe in Palestinian emancipation and you don't believe in a permanent occupation over Gaza, who gives a fuck if you can find a Palestinian that says, no, eviscerating Gaza is correct? Like, the conversation is not on the boundaries of, Jewish people versus Palestinians. The conversation is on Zionism versus anti-Zionism.
The Jewish people do not interpret that as a morally just statement. I mean, obviously, that is completely subjective.
Well, the reason why I mentioned that you're wrong in this, I'm sure there are a lot of Jewish people that don't interpret it as morally just. They think that it means ethnic cleansing.
No, you don't care about anyone else.
What you're supposed to do in that situation is not to immediately go, all right, well, Jewish people don't think this is appropriate, so.
I'm gonna go find black people. I'm gonna go find a group of black people say the Confederate flag isn't racist. I'm gonna go find.
Ethan, please stop. No, don't do that. Don't do that.
You're being ridiculous. This point is
Ethan, you're making a conflation that
However
makes you look horrible. Why don't you see this?
It means fucking nothing.
Ethan, you're making a conflation that literally makes you look so bad. Please stop doing that. Please.
Doing what? Doing what?
Stop bringing up slogans of an oppressive party in comparison to slogans that come from the oppressed side. It is a false conflation.
All I'm telling you is why people find it offensive. You don't want to hear it, and that's fine. or you disagree. I'm telling you why people find it offensive.
the-
They see it as a call for the destruction of Israel. That's how they view it.
I hope you can understand what I'm trying to say, because like
Israelis is basically they see things through the lens of everybody wants to kill us.
Do you think
so
a black
therefore-
white supremacist that defends the Confederacy is akin to a Jewish person that is defending Palestinian emancipation
My point
and
is that
saying
you
this
can
slogan?
you can find anybody to agree with any
I know,
fucking
but-
point. That the existence of somebody agreeing with a point is not proof of any fucking thing. And
There
the suggestion that it
there
is
are a
stupid.
ton of white people who think Black Lives Matter means fuck all whites and only Black Lives Matter. That doesn't change the reality behind the slogan, and that doesn't change the morality behind the activism. And the same goes for Palestinian emancipation. Just because people who are in defense of Israel, okay, people who are defending Israel and its continuation of an apartheid regime because the opposite makes them feel like it's going to be genocidal, doesn't change the reality of the slogan behind it and doesn't change the morality behind the actions. I am in support of Palestinians. I'm in support of all people living freely. I'm in support of
I am
permanent
too.
security.
Stop putting these fucking words in my mouth like I don't. The way you set that up is fucked up, and that's why people get so angry.
No, I'm not putting words
I'm
in your mouth,
literally-
but you're putting words in
I'm
your mouth.
explaining to you why people find it offensive. That's it.
Here
I'm
with
not.
the
You know what I mean?
Jewish voice.
I'm telling you how people interpret that, and like when people double down on it and they use it, and people, it's offensive to the vast majority of Jews. I'm telling you, despite how many you know that you could fit into a room that agree with you. I'm telling you
this is going to literally, like, I'm telling you, I don't know why you won't listen to me. I'm trying to, as your friend, I'm seriously urging you to reconsider your position.
What?
Because if
What's
you
my
are,
position? I'm literally just explaining why people find it offensive. What is my position exactly that is a problem? What's my position that's
your
a
position
problem?
comes along with the false conflation that this slogan is harmful to Jewish people. A slogan that is a slogan that is otherwise not harmful to Jewish people can be used in an anti-Semitic fashion. A slogan that is
people believe it is harmful to them.
But that doesn't change the reality of the slogan or the fact that there are plenty of Jewish people who are in support of Palestinian emancipation who use it. It's a slogan at the end of the day for a morally righteous cause. Just because
But there's also fucking terrorists that want to kill a bunch of Jews also amongst that cause, despite it not being a lot. That's how fucking Jewish people and Israelis interpret it. I'm just telling you, dude.
Okay,
whether you
Ethan,
agree or not, I'm just explaining it.
Ethan, I know you're just explaining it, except okay.
You're not gonna convince Jewish people that
It doesn't matter. I don't care about
It's not
convincing Jewish
offensive.
people. But first of all, I care about convincing whoever will actually listen and try to understand from a charitable perspective what I'm trying to say. But ultimately, yes, I am not going to move on this position because people are uncomfortable by this slogan, considering what the slogan actually is. There's no reason to concede. There are certain things that I find
that's not
completely
true.
unacceptable.
There are reasons. I mean,
you
like you
wrote-
said,
if you wrote From the
Hamas
River to the
uses
Sea,
it, terrorist groups use it, and so like there are reasons. Whether you agree with them or not is you're justified
Hamas
to
says
disagree.
free Palestine as well. Does that mean free Palestine means eradication of Jews? It's in their charter too.
No, it doesn't mean that.
Okay, what's the difference then?
I mean, obviously the context matters, right? Some people mean it that way.
That's
some
what I
people don't.
said. That's what I said from the start.
Right, but well, so free Palestine in it doesn't suggest the destruction of Israel, which is how again people interpret
No,
it.
that's not true. Plenty of
Free
Jews, plenty of Zionist Jews that I've seen think free Palestine means the destruction of Jews.
Okay.
Not just
Well,
Israel, the entirety of the international Jewish population.
I don't think that because from the river to the sea in the saying itself is people interpret it as the annihilation of Israel. That's how people see it.
Okay, when you want to understand what Black Lives Matter means, do you go to white people to ask them, or do you go to black people and ask them what it means? Who do you listen to?
Say what?
When you want to understand the purpose behind a slogan, do you go and ask what What white people think about Black Lives Matter, or do you ask black people what they mean when they say Black Lives Matter?
I would.
When you want to understand the
Just
meaning
tell me your
behind the
point. Just
slogan
tell me your
Black Lives
point.
Matter, do you
Yeah.
ask white people what they think it means, or do you ask black people what they think it means?
I guess I would probably just ask anyone involved in that movement. I don't know.
Okay, that's great. Are there black people in the Black Lives Matter movement that like legitimately hate white people and like maybe want to even kill them? I'm sure there are. There's one. You can find one of everything. Okay, like I'm sure.
Does what you're doing essentially with your
does that
using
change
Jews as tokens?
Does that change? No, listen to my words. Does that change the broader movement and the morality behind Black Lives Matter, or does that change what people mean when they say Black Lives Matter?
Black Lives Matter doesn't. Again, it's what's in the phrase, dude. Saying the thing is like saying Black Lives Matter doesn't insinuate that other lives don't matter. It's in the fucking phrase, bro. I don't know what to tell you. From the river to the sea,
Palestine will be free. Also doesn't feature from the river to the sea. We should destroy Israel and kill all the Jews. You're the one who's saying that is the secondary implication behind it.
I'm just telling you how people see it, bro.
I know, but if you were to tell me this is how white people feel about Black Lives Matter, I would say I don't care how white people feel in this regard, because my business is not about explaining what this.
There's inherent, bro. There's nothing in Black Lives Matter that's saying that white lives don't matter in the fucking.
There's nothing
slogan.
in from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free that implies Jewish people must be eradicated or Israel must be destroyed and Jewish people in it must be killed.
A lot of people disagree because you're talking about from the river to the sea.
Yes, a lot of people who are not Palestinian and a lot of people who are not anti-Zionist disagree. Anti-Zionists, on the other hand, don't agree, and they are the ones who are using the slogan. So why would I'm asking you, if I'm not going to ask a white person who is against Black Lives Matter, why would what they feel about this slogan? Why would I go to in the broadest majority Zionists, both Jewish and Christian? Why would I ask them what they think about a Zionist, anti-Zionist slogan?
I already explained it, but you don't want to hear me.
What? No, I'm asking you. Like,
it's not in the fucking slogan itself says. People interpret it as destruction of Israel. I know it doesn't say let's destroy Israel,
but it's not.
But that's from the river to the sea is mainland Israel.
Okay, Ethan.
That's it, man. That's how people see it.
You can't simply say that's how people see it and
it is though.
There. But it doesn't matter how Zionists see it. What matters is how anti-Zionists speak it. Anti-Zionists of all backgrounds, just like Zionists of all backgrounds, will sometimes cynically and other times because they're misguided think that this spells the genocide of Jews. It does not.
Can you do you care that your chat is calling me racist? Do you make any attempt to modify?
I have not looked at my chat.
Moderate that at all?
I have not looked at my chat at all. But
I just opened it. But don't you have moderators? Do you care at all about what your audience says about me?
There's 32,000 people in here right now. The reason why people are saying that is because of the conflations that you made, Ethan. That's why, I can't stop people from viewing you a certain way if you're going to make these comparisons that they've heard from actually racist people. You literally implied that Jewish Voice for Peace would be akin to a capo in this circumstance.
Oh, you are fucking so bad faith for saying that, and fuck you for even putting that out in the world. That was not my point.
Made this comparison.
My point was that you can find anybody to defend any fucking thing. That was my point.
You also made a comparison that this slogan is akin to the swastika changed over the course of its trajectory as a symbol for Nazi Germany. And then also on top of that stated that the Confederate flag means something different to the Southern folk that want to promote heritage, not hate. Those people, when they say that, are cynically saying heritage, not hate. It doesn't mean slavery to me. Those people are in the wrong. These people that are saying from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, are not in the wrong. They're in the right. That's the major difference. They are morally righteous, and their slogan in and of itself is on the exact opposite side of what the Confederacy implies. That's why a better comparison would still be to make a comparison to Black Lives Matter in the way that some white people foresee or perceive Black Lives Matter. And if I'm not going to listen to what white people who are against Black Lives Matter have to say about the slogan itself, then why would I listen to people who are defending Israel on what the slogan means? Because the broadest majority of people who consider this to be an anti-Semitic slogan are, in my opinion, deploying it cynically. Not you.
By the way, I'm not even defending I'm just trying to tell you guys how it feels. And I'm fucking shocked that you don't care that people in your chat are saying, "Who the fuck is this child? Cold, arrogant, as fuck."
I love you, but there's only so much I can do.
How can you be surprised when your Discord is literally full of fucking?
Ethan, I love you, but there's only so much I can do if you're making that argument. You know that, right? Like, at a certain point, you're an adult, and the words that you're saying are going to be perceived by people in a certain way. I can't constantly tell my community to shut the fuck up, which I have, and I think they should. But at the end of the day, it's because I know you personally, and I think your heart is in the right place. But they don't know, so it's hard. It's hard for people to view what you're saying beyond your words. I'm just telling you the
perspective. You disagree. That's it. I mean, what the fuck do you want from me?
Okay, but do you get where I'm coming from? Like, that's why I'm trying to
understand your analysis, dude.
Okay,
I understand your analysis.
I don't want my community to hurt your feelings. I don't want your feelings to be hurt either.
They're not hurting my feelings. They're fucking. They're monsters. They're like psychotic.
I think you're a good
not
person.
All of them, but there are a lot of them, and you don't seem to care about moderating it at all.
That's not true.
Whereas when you're on my show, we really do care about what people say about you on Discord and chat, and we moderate it to keep like a good environment. But you don't seem to fucking care about it.
There's no way I can shut off my chat. I mean, I can put it in emote mode, but that's it.
Just like
you shut off your chat. Just like you shut off your chat when these sorts of conversations happen in an effort to stop bad faith pieces of shit, we can put it in emote mode, which is what I'm doing now. But ultimately, you have to realize, like, when there's 33,000 people, and it's not even YouTube, it's literally fucking Twitch, so that it's even faster. It's almost impossible to moderate because people are going to perceive what you're saying in a certain way. This is not like, there's only so much moderation I can do if you make that comparison.
Do you have moderators in your chat? I don't understand. I didn't make any fucking comparison, dude. I'm literally just explaining how people feel about it. That's all I'm fucking doing, man. And you continue to put words in my mouth, making it seem like I'm comparing them to fucking Jewish Nazis and shit.
Hold on.
It's so fucked up. It's not fair. And when you say that shit, then people in your chat are obviously going to co-sign it. And they're going to fucking, think that, as I quoted, a Zionist fucking freak pig. I mean, I don't know. For the record, I understand the analysis, right? That it's not anti-Israel or anti-Semitic. I understand. And I agree with his analysis, actually. I do. I'm explaining why Jewish people around the world find it offensive. And I can tell you guys, most Jews do find it offensive because the way they interpret it, which is the destruction of Israel. That's how they interpret it, whether it's meant that way or not. And I think that it's worth, acknowledging that that's how people feel about it. Keep using it by all means.
Sorry, I was gone.
I'm talking to the audience.
Can you hear me? Okay.
I'm telling the audience because I don't think I can.
You know why? But
I'm just explaining to the audience that I'm simply explaining why people interpret it to be anti-Semitic or anti-Israel because of the insinuation that it is from the river to sea. They interpret it as it being a call for the destruction of Israel. You can use that phrase, and I agree with your analysis, Hasan, that you know what I mean, that people can use that phrase. It's okay. You know what I mean? I'm just explaining the perspective. If you care to respond to it or not. No,
I get the perspective.
If you want to keep using the phrase, that's fine. You know what I mean? I'm just explaining that I don't like that people act like it's so fucking shocking that, when Jewish people see that and interpret it one way. It's not fair. to make them seem like crazy Zionist
if you see
for interpreting it that way.
If you see my explanation of this, and if you hear Palestinians explain this term and this slogan and what it means to them and the history of the slogan, right? And instead of going, oh, wow, I didn't think about that. Actually, maybe I'm in the wrong here. I would rather listen to those who are anti-Zionist, Palestinians, and also American Jews and Western Jews who are anti-Zionist alike. If they all are if they all have this kind of perspective overall, then if you are also on the side of the emancipation of Palestinians, don't you think that the better thing to do here would be to educate people to ensure that there's not any further like misunderstandings on the front? Because that's the reason why I make this statement. That's the reason why I try to educate people when there's a sea of counterfactuals and counter narratives that simply claim unconditionally that this is like anti-Semitic. Anti-Semitic people can use this. I do agree.
I disagree that it's unconditionally anti-Semitic. But do you understand why some people might find that like a scary phrase to hear around the world?
The world. But
okay,
people
good.
also,
but
people also think. I know, but people also think Free Palestine is a scary phrase.
Bro, okay? So you acknowledge that Jews around the world, you can understand why they would see that and can think of it as a scary phrase to them. That would make them uncomfortable.
Yes, just like Black Lives Matter can be an uncomfortable phrase for people, but it doesn't change my mentality around the phrase. And if someone asks me,
okay, whatever, bro. I don't know.
What do you mean, whatever? That's not whatever. That's very important.
We're just talking in circles. We've already talked about this shit.
I know, but it's important because I don't want you to think that, like, I don't want you to think that I'm like cynically or in a weird way, just like being like, no, so. Anti-Semitism is like totally fine actually with this one phrase.
But what you won't make any fucking concessions, and it's crazy. Like I make so many fucking concessions to you all the time from my heart, and I listen and I fucking try to move towards your side every time we talk, and I do. But when I fucking try to explain to you, and you even sit here and you understand that, you know, it's why Jewish people around the world might find that phrase scary to them, you won't fucking even admit. Well, now you did that I asked you, but you think it's fucking silly. You don't want to hear anything I have to say, and you don't want to concede a single fucking point.
I think that
and it's not that fun to talk to you about it when it's like that.
Okay. I think the reason why it comes across as one-sided, even though it's not one-sided either, is because we're broadly in agreement. But I agree. But the potential fears that this might invoke in people who are otherwise misguided and propagandized against this phrase by those who have a cynical reason to tie this to Judaism in general is the reason why I try to educate people on the matter. Is the reason why when you and I are in disagreement, I want to explain it to you in all sincerity. I do not discount the fact that Jewish people might hear this. Otherwise, good faith and even, I guess, anti-Zionist or maybe critical, Jewish people who are critical of Israel, let's say, might hear this and think, oh, this seems anti-Semitic to me because I've been told it's anti-Semitic. But I think making a concession on this and saying, you know what, you're right. Some people are afraid of this slogan, so that must mean it's anti-Semitic is incorrect when it's not reflective of its history.
Understand why a large amount of Jews think that slogan is offensive to them.
I know, but just like with the one-state solution conversation,
like I'm just trying to like connect a fucking bridge at all between understanding.
I do understand it.
You can use that phrase. I'm not even disagreeing. But like if we're trying to actually like make bridges and fucking understand each other, you not being able to even concede why Jews around the world could interpret that way seems, you know, like it's not productive at all. Like you don't want to fucking see it from anyone's perspective.
But I do understand it, which is why I try to work against this counter narrative, this counterfactual. That's what I'm saying. I try to use the privilege that I have, the platform that I have, to deliver a voice for
understand.
a group
I
of
understand.
people, that are never on that are never really heard at all.
I think peace and progress happens when we connect and have empathy for each other. That's it. I'm explaining to you why Jews around the world might find that offensive, and and that's it. I think that it would be good to try to understand that. But
the question I have is this.
But I don't care to keep talking about it because we just keep talking in circles.
Okay, well, here I'll tackle it from a different angle.
All right, I gotta go soon anyway. My throat is fucking killing me.
Okay, well, I'm sorry that we couldn't make peace on this one issue. And
I
just, hope that
like it's just I just find it really fucked up how people are going to interpret this now, and I think based on some of your analysis, as me like comparing fucking Palestinian activists to Jewish Nazis or something. And like I'm not even fucking saying don't use the phrase. I'm simply trying to explain the perspective. And like if you don't want to hear the perspective, if you don't want to empathize at all with people that find it offensive, then conversing is kind of pointless.
I don't
like I feel like I'm just explaining it, man. And I'm not a fucking radical Jew. I'm not even a religious Jew.
No,
I have no stake in the game. And this is coming from
I know. All right.
Sorry. I don't know why I get so fucking emotional lately.
You all right? We don't have to continue if you don't want to and you don't feel like it.
Anyway,
I think this is the reason why I originally wanted to potentially feature Jewish voices in this conversation, because I feel like that would be. I feel as though that would be more productive. Even Israeli voices, as a matter of fact, and we can still do that at a later date if you'd like.
I just I'm not like a fucking I'm not a sensitive Jew. I never scream anti-Semitism about anything.
No, I know.
So like you can't. I don't even think it's fair to characterize like. I'm just telling you how people see it.
I
mean, that's all
Ethan,
I'm doing.
I know. I never said that.
You disagree. Clearly, that's it, and that's fine.
I've never said any of those things against you, and I don't believe that. Okay, I'm not saying that at all. I'm simply trying to describe the position of Palestinians in this matter, on this front. And
you've done that, and I understand, bro.
Anti-Zionists as a whole.
I understand. I've listened to you. I agree. That's it.
Okay. As far as shit. As far as being conciliatory on this front goes, I think that's the reason why it'd be better served to have this conversation not with myself, but with an anti-Zionist Jewish person.
Why does it matter if they're Jewish?
Because I'm not Jewish, and you've said in this conversation that, like, how can you tell me how to feel about the situation?
Yeah, but how is one person of representative of Jews at large?
I think that they can talk about it from a more united perspective, and give you more give you additional feedback and additional information.
Here, I'm just gonna. This person said, "Okay, we don't give a fuck if they interpret it like that." because they're fucking brain dead genocidal freaks. It's like understanding a fucking Nazi's perspective that emancipation for minorities is a threat to their existence. Get the fuck out of here.
Yes,
So,
because this is, and for the record, that is the perspective of someone who is not speaking about Jewish people. He's talking about Zionists. This is the difference. And
bro.
the number of Christian Zionists far outnumber the number of Jewish Zionists as a whole.
How are the by the way, how do you honestly expect the mods to keep the discourse like in any way like civil? That was a comment left by your mod.
Which mod said that?
I don't care. It doesn't matter. I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, why'd you bring it up?
No, I'm not trying to snitch. Okay.
But ultimately, you have to understand that the reason why people feel this way is because this is not like this community, these very same moderators, this entire moderation team has been tackling anti-Semitism for 4 or 5 years at this point. Like they're not anti-Semitic. They're not saying this because
another
they're
mod says Ethan is so bad faith. What have I been bad faith about? Like I genuinely don't understand that.
The way that people perceive your do you think people across the board are geared towards hating you here in this community, in my community in general? Do you think that I don't yell at them regularly and try to tell them not to have these kinds of perspectives? The reason why people feel the way that they do is because after a certain point,
what have I said that's bad faith?
I think you want me to be totally honest.
Yeah.
No kitty gloves. Okay.
Fuck you, bro.
No,
that insinuation is so stupid, man.
No. Please don't get mad at me. I'm gonna be
100%. Moron. You just talked down to me the whole time.
No, absolutely not. I think you're a very smart person, but you do get a little emotional on this issue.
Kitty gloves that's on. Tell me.
Okay. I think that what you said about from the river to the sea being akin to a Nazi slogan, or the fact that like it's a Confederate flag, those comparisons, because I know you personally and because I know you're an empathetic person, because I don't think you're a bad faith person at all, but anyone else that says something like that, it's going to come across, especially from the people that don't know who you are and what you represent, it's going to come across like you are making a bad faith argument that Ben Shapiro would make or any number of other conservatives would make in this circumstance. Of course people feel this way because they don't see your reconciliation process. They don't see that like you go back on information and you internalize it and you think about it and you come out with an honest perspective. They only see clips of you. They will see clips of you making that comparison, and
how is that bad faith? You're saying people take it out of context. That's not the same thing as being bad faith.
Well, I don't think it's being taken out of context because you're saying this in defense of bastardizing the perspective of Palestinians or minimizing the voice of Palestinians, Muslims, and anti-Zionist Jews, and the rest of the anti-Zionist movement. By trying to say, no, this is what it actually means. This is how it's being perceived by the other side. What it actually is perceived by the other side, the broader Zionist movement as a whole, does not change the reality of what this message means. It simply is used as another reason to silence any kind of emancipatory slogan and any kind of opposition. People feel like they can't say anything. People feel like they can't. People can't push for a ceasefire. The government's not listening to them. People can't even say free Palestine from the river to the sea because like then this is technically considered anti-Semitic. Like what should happen? Is there a boundary and a guideline that maybe the ADL could put forward that people can write?
I am not advocating for any speech I'm just giving you my perspective. I'm not saying don't say any of that shit. I'm just telling you how Jewish people around the world interpret that phrase. That's it.
I think if you were to ask anti-Zionist Jews how they interpret the slogan versus Zionist Jews, the difference would be stark.
So you're saying because of this group doesn't find it offensive that the other... I'm not saying they're right. You're saying this group of people find it offensive, therefore they're wrong? I mean, I'm just telling you how they feel. I mean, it's just feelings,
because it is an anti-Zionist slogan. That's why I think like listening to anti-Zionists in this front was more important.
And again, this is the way people hear it. At a certain point,
Also, what you're saying,
genociding all the Jews there does become anti-Semitic. And I'm not saying that's what anybody there wants to do.
of course, genociding all the Jews is anti-Semitic. That's insane.
That's how people perceive it, especially people in Israel.
No, but people also perceive Free Palestine to be the same. You yourself
I
admitted
don't.
that people in. Okay, you don't. But
I don't think it's the same. People don't
you
perceive it.
literally said a one-state solution is untenable, regardless of the morality of it, because people in Israel consider that to be akin to a possible genocide. You openly stated that paranoia is not a justifiable one, and yet people still feel it in their hearts. You cannot set the boundaries on an emancipatory movement by the unreasonable fears that people have about that slogan, because, or any slogan whatsoever, because ultimately it turns into, unless it's like directly violent and it's an incitement of violence, in which case, of course, unacceptable. Because at a certain point, this becomes an optics conversation that is used as a cudgel to like just fucking forcibly squash any kind of opposition. And that's already happening. In America, it's not happening. We still have some semblance of free speech. But in Europe, in different parts of the world, people are literally fucking getting apprehended. They're getting detained for saying from the river to the sea. So in my opinion, having this back and forth in good faith and having a conversation about it is fine. But that doesn't even change the reality or even break through the dam of the sea of people that are demanding a ceasefire, that want to stop the occupation, that want to end the apartheid, that has currently in this iteration, in this last iteration, in the siege, has killed almost 11,000 people with 4,000 children.
Bro, don't
And I
bring that
know
up
you-
as
and I
some
know you
fucking
don't
talking
think-
point against me. Because
No,
again,
I know
it
you don't
insinuates
agree with
I don't
that.
give a
I
fuck
know you
about
don't
that.
agree with that. I know you don't agree with that. I know. I'm not saying you do at all. I know you don't agree with that, and that's precisely why
All right,
I'm
listen,
saying just
listen.
listen to the Palestinians in this front
Okay, I'm listening to the Palestinians
and anti-Zionist Jews.
and anti-Zionist Jews.
Anyway, I'm sorry. I don't want to fight. I think this is like, I mean, it sucks, and I'm sorry that I made you feel a certain way. I'm sorry that my community made you feel a certain way. No, it's fucked up. I don't want you to. I think you're a good person. Just understand that people don't know the empathy that you have, and they simply see, similar talking points that they've heard from others that don't demonstrate that same empathy that you do when you're delivering their perspective here. That makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to have a conversation about it. I'm just trying to be honest and open and
I agree. I respect it, which is why I wanted to have this conversation to begin with. I hope you don't think that I'm like, harboring resentment or trying to get my fucking community to hate you. I'm working in the exact opposite direction.
well, I don't think your mods have a very vested interest in aligning their goals with yours.
I'll talk to them about it as well. But ultimately, there's a reason, and that is because they've heard this sentiment expressed by others, and they don't know you.
Here's another mod. C-Max says, you're just showing you're a Zionist, Ethan. There's another one saying, shrug dog, I don't care about your feelings. Which is fair. Yeah, I'm not taking it back, says Fish. Frogan said, I forget what she said, that I'm a Zionist or something like that.
The talking
I'm literally
points that
just
you've
trying to explain
demonstrated,
why
the
people
talking
feel that
points that
way.
you've demonstrated come across like you are in defense of Israel, and they are identical to the talking points that those who support Israel put
When did I
forward.
defend Israel?
But I know you're not. I know.
When? No, when? You said it can be when?
No, you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. I know you're not. I know you personally. I know what you represent. I know the values that you represent. I know that you're empathetic. The talking points that you bring forward, however, are identical to the same talking points that I literally spent the entire day dissecting. That's the difference. That's why people see that and they automatically ascribe bad faith, bad faith to what you're saying.
Like what though? What's a talking point that you'd hear Ben Shapiro say?
Where do I begin? I think that the from the river to the sea conversation, every single thing that you've brought up, I've heard from. I mean, if I pulled up a Ben Shapiro video right now, he'd probably say identical things.
Right. And on that one, I'm just saying, as a member of the Jewish community at large, and myself being a moderate, fucking secular, non-religious, unsensitive to a not like desensitized to anti-Semitism for being on the internet so long. Like, I'm just giving you the perspective. You disagree with it, and that's fine. But you can't argue about how people feel. You know, it's an emotional,
I know.
it's an emotional thing.
I know.
That's what it is.
And I'm not even trying to argue about how people feel. I'm saying I'm not trying to argue about how people feel. I'm trying to explain what the historical background of that sentiment is and how it's being oftentimes.
What else other than that? What else other than that?
It's mostly that.
I know Ben Shapiro says that. Listen, I'm just telling you the perspective. What else did I say that would
I think I don't know. I haven't watched a lot of your takes. Like I genuinely don't know.
You said
today
is
just the river to the sea thing for sure. That's it.
You made it sound
beyond
like
that,
today in
beyond
the
that,
conversation I was echoing all kinds of talking points that suggest that I'm defending Israel.
Wait,
and I don't remember.
I didn't say that. I'm talking specifically about river to the sea thing. But as far as like a two-state solution goes, I think you're or a one-state solution goes. Like even having that conversation alone implies that you're not a Zionist. So I don't know why.
Dude, I literally conceded to you that the one state might make more sense.
I know, Ethan. I know.
Like,
I'm telling you that I don't feel that way anyway. I'm not coming from it from that perspective at all. I'm also eating now. I'm just letting you know. But
yeah, I can see it's fine. All right, I do have to go. I mean, I don't know if this was productive or anything really at all. My sense of this is that I'm going to probably deeply regret having this conversation, but that's what it is.
Ethan, I love you. I wanted to talk to you beforehand, so we can just like have a more productive outline for a conversation like this.
I mean, this is what I wanted to talk about.
What?
No, this is what I wanted to talk about.
No, I know. I just look, as a final statement on this for everyone that's watching, Ethan is not a bad person. He's not a Zionist. He is delivering the perspective of a person that has lived in Israel. Yelling at Ethan is not going to be productive in this situation or appropriate in this situation.
Don't you think it's like if you're trying to reconcile between two different groups of people, don't you, even if one group is wrong, let's say, do you think it's at least even a little important to try to understand their perspective?
100%. No,
okay.
I do. I talk about the importance of building a broad. I talk about the importance of building a broad movement all the time. And in order to engage in coalition building, you have to be conciliatory, you have to be understanding, you have to be empathetic, lead by empathy.
Like if you want to call me Israel defending, I'm like the most milquetoast fucking pro-Israel defender you can possibly find. So like you gotta learn, people need to learn to build a fucking bridge somewhere.
I'm not saying that. I hope you understand. I know.
Yeah, you're not saying it, but I do think that a large part of your community thinks that. It's clearly reflected by all the shit that the mods continue to say. And so
I think it stems from. I
just got a fucking Air Force ad.
Yeah, I just ran an ad.
Right.
I forgot to run it at the top of the hour.
All right, listen. Let me just clarify. Israel's wrong. The settlements should be removed. Netanyahu's a war criminal. I fucking hate him and his whole cabinet. They're genocidal, absolute psychopaths. Fucking despise them. I think the Palestinian people, I think the blockade needs to be lifted. I think that Israel is indiscriminately bombing Gaza. I think that this indiscriminate bombing of Gaza is fucking horrific and horrible and absolutely destroys Israel's position. I don't know what more I can do to try to empathize as someone who's an Israeli. I don't know. And so that those are my positions. If I try to explain a perspective of a Jewish or Israeli person, I'm not endorsing it. I'm not defending it. I'm only saying it because I think it's important for people to understand the perspectives of those on the other side of them, so that you can connect with them better. That's it. That's my goal. And
what could the pro-Palestinian side do better? I think that's a good question to ask you. Like, as far as its own advocacy, I don't mean this like cynically.
I'll answer it. I hate to speak so broadly about the whole movement, but in general, I've seen, and what I'm seeing now is just like a really vitriol, like there's zero empathy or tolerance or desire to hear the perspective that I'm doing, and so much so there's not only a lack of empathy, there's a downright an outright hatred for it. I mean, I feel like a lot of people can't differentiate between like real Zionist propagandist psychotic fucking freaks and then someone like me who's a secular modern fucking unreligious and concerned Jewish person, Israeli, that's concerned about what's happening to the Palestinian people. And so I think that people, again, I can't speak to the whole movement at broad, but I can talk about what I'm seeing in your community with your mods and such, is that there's such a quick, it's so quick to condemnation. It's so quick to interpret the worst faith possible. There's no charitability. And I understand because tensions are high. People are rightfully upset about what's happening. I mean, that's to put it mildly, right? As you said, I mean, 10,000 people died. 6,000 of them are kids, or maybe even more, 8,000, I don't know. But there has to be, if there's not even tolerance for someone with my perspective, then I genuinely don't think that there's ever going to be a chance of anyone reconciling this in a meaningful way. I just think it's counterproductive to look at me like the fucking villain and to call me a Zionist and to interpret what I'm saying as someone who's no different than, your run-of-the-mill militant fucking fundamentalist settler or fanatic in Israel.
I agree. I think that I think that people are too quick to jump to conclusions, especially because of the prevalence of certain talking points that they hear, that they immediately go, "Oh, it seems like he's defending Israel." In the same way that people look at me and say, "Oh, you don't care. You love Hamas. Like, you must love Hamas. It's very obvious that you love Hamas," over and over again. Despite the endless condemnations that I deliver,
I feel that,
and talk about the brutality of it. It's just people are very black and white on the internet, and they want to put you in a neatly defined box that says you believe this, and I think that you believe this, and you're sneakily and cynically and talking against this other position. I will not listen to what you have to say. I simply am going to perceive you a certain way and go along with it. I obviously disagree with that. That's why I try to break through that on a regular basis. I try to instill charitability in my audience as well when talking to people. And that's... I do
think, though, in general, like I agree with what you're saying about yourself. I know that all that about you. But I do think, like, on the whole, that your community is extremely hostile towards me. Or maybe not. I don't know. I don't know what's the percentage. I mean, how could I tell?
There's plenty of.
But I feel like they're overly.
There are plenty of fans of yours in this community. I think that
No, I don't know what's the percentage, but like, it's very. I don't know. I feel like very unwelcomed, and maybe it's going back to the fucking Discord that I know you don't log in there, but like, it's just
no. Not only do I don't regularly go in there, I've literally moderated it, but also on top of that, have told the mods to like, I've told the mods to deal with it. The thing is, now that you've said like, I don't know. I just like, everyone is going forward from this point on. There are going to be people that like regularly will take clips that you've had on this broadcast and use it against you and say that you have a certain position and continue fucking bullying you, which I disavow and I disagree with, and I think it's fucking bullshit, and I've said it time and time again, you know this. And then also on the other side, people are going to be eating good and being like, see, Hasan and his community fucking despise Ethan. Like when you said that about Discord, my Discord and my community, everybody went along with it. The worst pieces of shit that you and I both fucking despise, like all those fucking little weirdos on Twitter, like the likes of Ian Miles Wrong and shit, you know, quartering, like they all fucking went along with it. And we're like, Hasan's community are fucking anti-Semitic and they all fucking hate Ethan and they're all woke and they hate Ethan. And I hate that shit. I despise it. Like whenever you and I have a back and forth like this, they eat so good and I despise it. Like they're probably going to use this as well. Constantly fucking driving a rift and constantly moving away from like having a charitable conversation, having an important and productive back and forth.
I do feel, and people say, oh, you're wrong. Well, that's why. I do feel like if I was to take a snippet from our Discord, it would be so positive and so nice and so supportive of you, even when they disagree. Whereas if I look at your community's responses, some of the stuff I'm saying, they're super fucking, and maybe they're justified because of what's happening in Gaza right now. But it's just so negative and so hateful and so nasty and so uncharitable and so mean-spirited that that it just makes me feel unwelcome, and it makes me feel like sometimes that what we're doing here is kind of pointless. But I admire everything that you do, and I support everything that you do, and
it's also I think it's also because it's a political community, which is fucking cancerous and awful in general, especially like this morning. I talked about walking my dog. I was 10 minutes into the broadcast, and the first thing I saw in the fucking chat was, oh, so no more BDS against Starbucks, I guess? Because I said I got a puppuccino for my dog. I never said I went to Starbucks. I never said anything. For the past fucking for the past 4 weeks, almost 5 weeks now, I have continuously talked about what is going on in Gaza. And yet there were still people who are mentally ill and fucking bad faith who were like, oh, I guess you went to Starbucks and purchased all the Starbucks you possibly could, and that must mean you hate the BDS movement. That must mean you hate Palestinians in general. So this shit happens to me all the fucking time, too. It's part and parcel of, like, being, unfortunately, in the political realm, especially when it's, like, an environment that is ultimately very emotional, that people, people do the two awful worst things you could do. We're marrying parasocial attitudes that are already unhealthy with political perspectives that people get like incredibly polarized on and incredibly impassionate about. So obviously, no matter what happens, like if you look at this kind of stuff and it let the kind of stuff sway your opinion, it's going to destroy you mentally. It's just something that
listen,
sucks.
I've been
I have to deal with
the internet
always.
so fucking long, dude. I'm impervious for the most part. I would thought into this shit, But this stuff that's happening here really,
I know what it is. It's getting yelled at by those you perceive as your allies. Happens to me all the fucking time too. You recall this happened during the you bought a house saga when you and I had this conversation. Okay?
Can you hear me?
What? I can hear you. What's going on?
A text from you said, "Can you hear me?" That's weird. I guess
no, that's old. Also, don't show your phone on your camera.
Yeah.
Anyway, no. Remember,
listen, I do.
Remember we had this conversation when I bought a house. Last thing I want to say. Remember when I bought a house and everybody fucking lost their minds, or when I bought a car and everybody lost their fucking minds? The people that were yelling at me in that situation were not right-wingers. I mean, sure, there were right-wingers that were yelling at me and taking advantage of the situation too. It was mostly fucking people with hammer and sickles in their fucking bios on Twitter. That didn't change my perspective, and it didn't change my opinion on the world, and it didn't change my analysis one bit. Because ultimately, you have to remember, like, a lot of that comes from a place of anger, resentment, frustration in their own personal lives. You just have to keep learning and keep going on this journey, be as charitable as you possibly can to others, and lead by empathy. There are going to be people who you perceive as allies who will yell at you, and it's going to hurt your fucking soul. And it has happened to me more than anyone on this planet, okay? It's coming from a place of powerlessness. It's also coming from a place of, like, access, where they think they have access to you, where they know you will hear what they have to say, and you will respond to it, and it'll make them feel good.
What about when all those people saying that are your mods? I mean, that seems more personal.
It's the exact same principle behind that as well. It's the exact same principle of, like, people perceiving what you're saying without knowing your background, without knowing what you believe. Like, my mods aren't, like, these are not people I'm you know, seeing personally every single day, Ethan. They are fans all the same. They don't know you. They don't know the conversations.
Listen, I do have to go. What I was saying is this. I have always admired what you do, and I have always supported what you do, and I will continue to do that. And I think that you can, that's it. I don't know. And you can say from the river to the sea. You can say free Palestine.
No, okay.
Do all that shit. It's not, I don't think that it's inherently anti-Semitic to say those things, to be clear. I don't think that fucking Jewish people that are anti-Zionist are fucking Nazi sympathizers. Okay?
I don't think you. I
don't think that.
I don't think you believe that. I know. I'm saying.
I don't think that Confederate that Jews who are anti-Zionist are Confederate supporters. I am anti. I'm not a Zionist, so I'm not sure where that comes from. Oh, I know people are saying it, but in short, I support you. I've always respected what you do, and I will continue to do that. And that's it. Is Ethan drunk? No, I'm just sick and tired.
Okay, well, before we go, please don't read shit online. People are going to be fucking ruthless, knowing full well that you read it and it pisses you off and it hurts your feelings. That's why people are doing it for the most part. Anyone who thinks that, like, taking you down a notch or a peg is going to, like, somehow be productive or somehow win anything and call you a Zionist and yell at you is wrong. They're wrong. They're in the wrong. They're not thinking about this. They're just simply selfishly trying to yell at you, just like people selfishly try to yell at me all the fucking time, because it's a mechanism of, like, releasing stress, especially in an incredibly stressful environment. We as we in the online arena as e-celebrities, shitty e-celebrities, are always going to be punching bags. Okay, so don't read any of that shit. Don't. Not good. Yeah. It's not reflective of anything other than people's own personal perspectives. I say this as not only your friend, but also as someone who's looking at it even from the outside. Okay.
Listen, I want to say to everyone watching in chat that I appreciate you guys' perspective. I love you guys, and thanks for watching. And I hope that, you know, anything I said doesn't come off.
Okay. All right. Bye, Ethan. Oh shit. Okay. All right. That was I guess an impromptu leftovers that we did.